On this episode of the Star Wars Time Show, Matt and Nick will kick things off with some official Star Wars on Disney Plus information because this source is coming straight from the mouse. They'll then dive into their latest Star Wars fanboy special topic, which deals with the concept of what if Dave Filoni was involved in the sequel trilogy in his new CCO role. How would the movies remain the same, or would they have been different? If these are the fake Star Wars scenarios you've been pondering, you will not be disappointed this week. Just know the movies will never change. This is just a silly exercise in what-if-isms. Of course, the show will end with the question of the week responses and the latest round of Top 5 Star Wars Fan Artist Features. Punch it, Chewie.
Hey now! Welcome back to the Star Wars Time Show, everyone. It's great to see the two of you here. Shout out to J.O.D. Get some. Bat. Get some. First into the live stream. Remember, friends, if you want to get into the live stream fun, it's usually Tuesdays, 5 p.ish, EST, youtube.com/Star Wars Time Show. You know, Nick, I was listening to my buddy today, Howard, right? And Fred really shined in the episode. And I always lament that we don't have a dedicated Fred. It's just like, it's just such random shit that he adds to the show through sound drops. And I know, we tried the soundboard. It was stupid. But it was hilarious. Like he was doing a bit where they're making fun of Jada Pinkett Smith talking about Will so much on all these talk shows. So Howard's like, bah, 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 and then Fred finds a sound fix where it's like, bah, 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 and then it gets into that song where it's like, but they're just doing bah, 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 bah. I was like, all right. I know it makes sense to no one here unless you listen to that episode, but it is fun, and I want a Fred. But we don't have one. We got Nick and Matt in the SWTS HQ rocking it out this week. We got some official Star Wars to get to, like legit official Star Wars, and the funny thing is, it's the same shit we've been feeding you right here from the SWTS, but no one ever believes us because we're stupid. And we're back with our, was this third or fourth special topic in a row? All right?
Yep.
There's a reason for this. People seem to dig it. It gives us some clips to put out there that have more or less died off. We had our run of getting some clip juice. That's all killed, probably because I mostly do it now, and I am a cancer when it comes to anything Star Wars, Time Show, Star Wars itself, or posting to social media. So maybe I can convince Nick to do a few because he seemed to have the magic touch. He is a pro when it comes to marketing to you fools digitally online. So we'll see, but don't forget to check that shit out. YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, some flavor of Star Wars time in a show. All right, that's how we roll. Or just go to starwarstime.net. You know what I mean? You can get all the goods there. We even have a TikTok link on there now because we are awesome. All right, so I'm excited to get into the special topics. It could be a fun one. Could get a little dicey here. All right, so don't get ready to cancel us because we're going to be talking about the sequel trilogy. In fact, we're going to be pitching what would they have been like if Dave Filoni was CCO and actually involved at the inception of these projects versus what we got. And just to kind of set that up a little bit, we're not trying to make wholesale changes and just go, oh, Dave would have came in and whatever George was going to do, he would have gave Bob the double bird and just ran with that script. No, that's too easy. We're going to try to not make wholesale changes as we infer what Filoni might have said to these 3 or 4 different writers way back, probably 2013 at this point in time when they sat down to talk about these movies. So it should be fun. We're going to talk about all 3 films. Obviously, TFA is not going to get a lot of love. The middle one, I know some of you, it rubs you the wrong way. It's why you canceled Star Wars and hate Disney and want to kill Mickey Mouse. So there'll be things to say there, and then obviously we'll end with the shittiest of the three, Tross, and kind of, take a dump on that one, because quite frankly, I don't care what you think about Luke or anything. The Rise of Skywalker is a complete tire fire from a narrative standpoint. It just makes this disconnected sequel trilogy feel even more disconnected and farcical, as Al Michaels likes to say. But before we get there, you know how we roll. We got to go around the pop culture universe, let you know what is fun to get into or stay away from. Obviously, if you're like Nick and I, or, I would say if you're aged 18 might even be too young, Nick, but you never know. 18 to 50, 18 to 55, you probably are aware that the GTA 6 trailer got leaked and then therefore was released officially yesterday. So that's a huge thing in pop culture, not just gaming. Like GTA is, right, Nick? GTA is a pop culture icon. Am I wrong or right? Am I right or am I wrong?
It's definitely the game that has like penetrated pop culture outside of just like the gamer sphere more than anything else. And I think that Rockstar has kind of found a way to do that with other titles too, like with Red Dead Redemption, specifically Red Dead 2. Like Red Dead 2 hit a portion of the population, and just for a heads up, I've never played it.
Me neither.
Like I have no desire to play it either.
Too much work, too much horse bullshit. I just want to get in cars, loot people, beat people on the street, fly away, ride dirt bikes. You know what I mean? Yeah, and like
they've just found a formula where they can grab the attention of people who typically don't play video games with what they do, and GTA was the first one to do that. Yeah. I mean, for me, like I haven't played a GTA game like in any significant fashion since Vice City. Like didn't play San Andreas.
So you skipped 4 and 5, like the actual not cubic graphics GTA.
Like I played GTA 3, which was the first PS2 release, and that was the one that brought GTA into like the 3D realm.
Oh yeah.
And then I played Vice City. But after that, like to be completely honest with you, GTA is a very monotonous game, and they're all the same. Like you can say whatever you want about like, oh, there's a different main character. It's all the same bullshit. So like once San Andreas, I had no interest in San Andreas. I forgot that GTA 4 was actually a game because I thought that either Vice City or San Andreas
that was the one with the European
4.
guy. It was GTA 4.
Yeah, no clue. And then GTA 5, I only played it online with my friends who were like back in Louisiana. We would like play the GTA online portion of it. So GTA to me is just like, yeah, it's like fun to sit there and drive around in cars, I guess. But like, I just don't have an interest in that type of game because it doesn't like, all it does is just put me back on the streets that I walk every day anyway. And it's like, there's no fantasticism or escapism that's within that game other than the fact that you just shoot people.
Yeah, you don't like driving around and murdering innocents and robbing shit and getting money.
Yeah, it's like, I would rather, if I'm going to do that, I would rather do it in another type of game.
Nick wants to kill people in space.
Yeah. Like
I guess, I mean, here's the deal. I, obviously, being the age that I am, I'll never forget the coming of GTA 3 and, all the goofy religious shit out there. Like, oh, it's going to make people crazy. Remember all that? This is terrible. This is why the youth are going out and killing and raping. It's these video games. It has nothing to do with life in general. You know what though? I'm kind of like you. It never quite tickled my fancy until San Andreas. I don't know what it was about San Andreas. I don't know if it was, you rotated
because you could ride a bicycle.
Who the fuck knows? I just the shit sucked me in. I fully beat the campaign. I dicked around in the online for a little bit. But as you were saying, kind of tying this back to Rockstar. Rockstar has excelled at creating franchises that people will spend decades in. I mean, the GTA 5, Nick, it's probably 10 years old at this point in time, if not more. And motherfuckers still play it every single day, at least the online version. And of course, this trailer coming out also shows the power of this franchise. I mean, it was the buzz of the internet yesterday. And of course, today it's the darling or the bastard of Reddit, thanks to all the trolls out there that do not like that GTA 6 is going to have a female protagonist. Hey, it's like we're talking about a Star Wars project. That's pretty much par for the course these days. If your game, your movie, your TV show is going to have a female protagonist or people of color in it that are actually in the screen and you can see them and they might play a major role, it's woke. Okay, so just to let you know, if you're in that crowd, you might as well not even watch GTA 6 the trailer, because your woke meter is going to blow your fucking eyes out of your skull. To me though, I love it. I mean, GTA 6, it's going back to Vice City, back to where Nick ended his adventure in GTA. The main character is Lucia, and it almost looks like you're gonna be like dual mains. It's like her and her boyfriend almost, but I believe you play as Lucia, and because it is set in Vice City, aka Miami. You look around, Nick, and the NPCs, they're it's not a bunch of white people. It's like, well, yeah, it's in Miami, so that's a very heavy Latin population, and it's like, what's wrong with people? But why? I don't know why we even asked that question. We know what's wrong with people. It was the MAGA movement and social media that has allowed motherfuckers to collectively get together and scream into their echo chamber and make themselves feel better about whatever is sucking at their soul. So I'm digging it. I think GTA 6 looks pretty fantastic. Sadly, it's 2 years away almost. I mean, 2025. You PC master racers are going to be upset because they're only, as of right now, releasing it for PS5 and Xbox 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever fucking letter or number combo they want to give it to. So if you haven't checked it out, check it out. It's pretty funky. The only thing that I'm a little worried about, Nick, and this just shows my age and my inability to master it, is based on the trailer, it looks like there a lot of social media shit that the younger generations live and die by is going to be built into this game, like taking fucking verticals, live streaming yourself, robbing banks and shit. I'm just like, I don't know about that. Hopefully it's not too pervasive in the gameplay, but for the most part, it looks like a juicy title that a primo dev has been working on for probably 5 or 6 years at this point in time. Yeah.
I mean, they've probably been, 5 or 6 years at the minimum for sure.
Didn't the code get breached last year? Like the game code got hacked into?
I think I remember something like that. Rockstar had like a breach of its, I don't know if it was of its data warehouse or whatever, but there was a general Rockstar breach where they did find some of the source code for GTA 6, and I don't know if anything ever came from it. I mean, obviously the game itself didn't leak because it would be all over the place now. So, I think that for Rockstar, they know their bread and butter, and they also know that like the turnover rate for gamers as they get older for their games is pretty high, and I think that they've addressed that with the Red Dead franchise. Like the Red Dead franchise is like what you're supposed to graduate to in Rockstar Land after you're just like GTA is boring, or like GTA is just not for me anymore.
Because Red Dead it wasn't quick enough for me. It was like it's a little too slow, a little too 19th century.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's just like, I'm not trying to shit on the game or anything, but like I watched it and I was like, okay, it looks like every other GTA game that I'm not going to play. But it's like
you like that twerking. There's a lot of twerking. Twerking on car hoods, twerking in strip clubs.
I guess I only saw the car hood one, but I did see that apparently that was like people were talking about that a lot. But yeah, I mean, like I
remember from She-Hulk, Nick, you can't twerk. It's woke. Okay, you can't. Like, She-Hulk caught a bunch of flack because there's twerking in it. So twerking also equals woke now. Just for people that are keeping score on what's woke or what's not woke, add that to your tally there.
I mean, here's what's realistically going to tell you if this is actually going to have an effect on it is the sales. Like the sales of the game are going to be.
Every one of these fucking shitheads are going to buy it. Okay, it's probably just like every other GTA. It's probably going to clear 500 to 600 mil week one. I mean, that's what the last one did, I believe. Do you know, I don't really want to get down this path. Did COD this year have a 500 a half bill release like they do every year?
I haven't played a COD game in 15
me neither,
years.
but I still think every November Activision's like, hey, crank open the COD ATM. It's time for an infusion of a half a bill. Because that's what that game did year in and year out. Every COD iteration would be, oh, you want a $500 million? Okay, here you go.
Oh, Modern Warfare 3 was the one that released this year.
What do we get? Any figures here?
Apparently it was awful.
Okay,
I'll say that because the reviews on it are shit.
Yeah, Bat's saying here in the chat, games are like they're getting up to 70. I love when Nintendo has the gall to charge $70 for its games, which are a generation behind the consoles at this point in time. But that's Nintendo. They get away with it because they are so niche-y and they create that unique experience that people can't get away from. I mean, that's Nintendo had the best ever business model. Like, hey, let's get these fuckers born in the 70s and 80s addicted to this shit, and they will never let it go. Through nostalgia, they'll pass it on to their kids, and we got them for generations.
It's definitely, they have the best understanding of their market and how to create content for them that they'll actually come after. So apparently the GT or the COD Modern Warfare 3 2023 release sales figures were 25% below what they were for the last release.
Right, so probably around
not good.
Like 200 or 300 mil. Yeah, that's rough.
I mean, it's just like for a franchise, especially for a franchise like that, where like you're literally like Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3, those were games that literally were already released. Like they developed and released those games, 10 years ago or something like that. And now they've run out. They have literally developed so many games that they are just renaming
that's the
game
key
after what they've already done.
You're right. It is mostly a rename because they're not just recreating Modern Warfare 2 or 3. That it is a bit different, but they're using the same fucking monikers, which is odd. But oh well. Moving on into the pop culture universe, as I promised you all last week, I had to get my fat ass out to a movie. I am a big fan of history films, especially if war is involved. So I want to go see Napoleon before it hit Apple TV Plus because I'm a lazy ass and I have AMC Plus or whatever the fuck it's called, so it was free anyways. And I will tell you, I didn't know a ton. I knew the basics on Mr. Bonaparte. I mean, obviously being a short man, I'm very well aware of the Napoleonic complex, okay? They don't really focus in on that in this film. But I will say, in terms of pure just kind of consuming history of that era about this man, I think the film does a very good job. All right, very good job. Like, I had no clue this dude got exiled twice. Like, literally, France kicked him out once. He's like, I'm bored. I want to come back, and was able to muster up the army again against whatever, people took control. And the other thing I didn't realize is how much death this guy was responsible for in the world at that time when we did not have weapons of mass destruction, Nick. I mean, in his time commanding France's forces, and at times he also was commanding parts of Europe's forces, he was, I guess you have to say, directly responsible for 3 million deaths. And I'm talking when all you had were muskets and rudimentary mortars and cannons, and you still used cavalry charges. You still, like assholes, lined up and just fucking used bodies as walls. All right, they're dead. You go.
Yeah, it's like now you step up to get shot.
Yeah, and if you think about that, like in that time, we're talking late 1700s, turn of the 18th century. No gas-powered vehicles, all marching, all horses still. This dude and his ambitions literally spent 3 million lives. That is impressive. That is impressive. But here's the thing. It's like I thought Joaquin was was pretty darn good, as expected. I mean, the guy's a little goofy, but he's also an excellent actor, and that's usually, most excellent actors are a little off. Okay, it did feel. It felt like the edit was a little weird. You know, it's like they would jump timelines or just jump from, oh, we're at a battle now, we're here. How did that happen? What's really going on here? Was Napoleon this big of a cuck? So on and so forth. Mm-hmm. But hey, I'll tell you what. I wouldn't say if you are a history buff, go see it in the movies. Otherwise, you can probably save it for its Apple TV Plus debut. It's still going to be quality to watch at home, but Ridley Scott, not so great. He's kind of like a George, right? Not so great at giving direction and maybe providing a good edit to his editors, but always great at action and war-like visuals, right? I mean, this is still the guy that did Gladiator, all that shit. So the battle scenes are fucking excellent. I mean, seeing Napoleon and his brilliance in action it really is kind of cool to see if you are into, you know, war games and the strategy of war, so on and so forth. So there you go. A few things to check out in your pop culture life. All right, buddy, you want to get right into the Star Wars? What do you think?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's
get into what's happened this week in Star Wars, which is basically nothing. Not
much, but it's starting, right? The that steam valve was finally loosened a little bit after both strikes were resolved. Last one early November here. So we are finally starting to get some of the official word out again. Press releases are coming out again. And in fact, we got one this week that more or less confirms what we have been telling you. You know, last week we had that article from Empire saying, oh, there's going to be 3 shows next year. Andor's one of them. And we're both kind of like, yeah, you know, pump the brakes on that, people. Like, I don't know if the intern wrote this, AI wrote it, or they just can't read the fucking map. But there's no way Andor is ever going to be ready for 24. It's impossible. Never finished principle, which means you still got to do a shoot, then you still got to do post to get it ready to go. So it just wasn't going to happen. And we've always been telling you, like, this is more than likely what's going to go down 24. You're going to get Skeleton Crew because that was ready to rock, and then you're probably going to get Acolyte and obviously Bad Batch and Tales. Well, Nick, we no longer have to play Nostradamus. All right, we can tell SWTS Nation here the truth, the official word coming out of Disney Plus, straight from Lucasfilm. This was a press release essentially teasing all the series coming out in 2024, not just Star Wars, but there's always time for Star Wars time, so we're only going to focus on this shit. All right, so Lucasfilm in 2024 guaranteed The Acolyte and Skeleton Crew. Okay? So here's the tricky thing, Nick. And this kind of comes from our buddies over at Bestman Bulletin and Jason over at Making Star Wars here. I've been the one beating the drum for Skeleton Crew is fucking done, right? It's gold, as they say. It's ready to rock, load it into the Blu-ray player, stream it to the nation. Well, according to people out there that you know, they're in the know, Lucasfilm connections, reading the tea leaves, it's now sounding like, and BB Bestman Bulletin reported this back in September before this report even came out, and now Making Star Wars is confirming it, but they're both hearing that Skeleton Crew is actually going to be held until essentially this time next fall. So, Nick, it sounds to me as if they're going to stick to the original time of year they wanted to release it, just a year later, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense because the reason that they're probably doing that is so it can have a direct lead into one of the other properties that it is directly,
which
like
probably Mando season 4, more than likely.
Mando season 4, probably. Yeah, I mean, Ahsoka season 2 is still an up in the air thing. We have no idea if that's going to happen, so likely not going to lead into an Ahsoka season 2. But yeah, like Mando season 4, we know is going to be involved with, you know, the Thrawn stuff. We know it's going to be involved with what's happening from the Ahsoka series that we've seen, and we also know that Skeleton Crew is linked with that kind of Mandoverse.
The pirates for sure. I mean, the
shows.
pirates we saw in Mando season 3, they're supposed to play a hand. There's potential for Hondo. You never know. But think about it this way. I mean, we know Skeleton Crew is going to be the most kid-centric show to date. That promotes family viewing. What if families most likely tend to get around the holiday season? So I think their plan was always to have this as a late fall release so we could watch it during Thanksgiving, maybe let it trickle all the way up to Christmas, something like that, so they could get kind of that family bonding feel over it, since it wasn't necessarily going to be your mom and pop's Star Wars. It's not going to be an Ahsoka where, my kid dug it with a lowercase d, but it wasn't necessarily blown away by it. I mean, it hurts my Star Wars soul that my kid more or less has moved on. Just ain't her thing, right? I'm not gonna beat it into her fucking head. It kind of sucks. I thought I did enough, and just osmosis would have worked, but she just doesn't get it anymore. But I do think if the show was with kids on an adventure, she would tune in, because I see some of the shit she watches, and it's god awful crap, and she loves it. She loves it. Like these shitty low effort European Christmas movies on Netflix. They're so bad, but she'll sit there and be like, "Oh yeah, well the kids, blah blah blah." She's watching some holiday Christmas farm movie set in England yesterday, and it was horrendous. But watched the whole thing and thoroughly enjoyed it. So I do think Skeleton Crew was probably always meant to be that. Hey, let's save it for family time, the holidays when people are kind of gathering.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how this show goes, because it's in a weird position. Like, it has no characters that you're familiar with in it, at least that have been announced yet. Like, obviously we only know of Jude Law's character and then the kids that are associated with him on that journey. But it will be interesting to see, like, hey, like, leading up to the release of this show, are they going to try to incorporate more of the characters from the Mandoverse in the advertising, so people who aren't familiar with the storyline of this show can like see stuff like, oh, this is that girl Ahsoka, like this is linked to what's going on there, and look, there's the Mandalorian in there too. Like, is this a show that is closely associated with that, and try to pull people in that way? So,
well, it would be smart, right? I mean, it's kind of what you were saying with Ahsoka, and we pitched a few shows ago. They've done a poor job making all this stuff feel cohesive. We're not doing the stingers. We're not doing the lead-ins. There really is no connective tissue unless your name is Matt or Nick, and you essentially study this shit like it matters, like it really matters. So I agree with you. I think the biggest bump you could get with Skeleton Crew is seeing a shiny fucking chrome helmet or a little green head. You know what I mean? I mean, that's instant visual recognition. I get the timeline. I get where we're going. Okay, I'll give it a go. Oh, the guy that did, Spider-Man. Okay, sure. I like those movies. So I think Skeleton Crew, now it's not as high on my I want to watch list as The Acolyte, because The Acolyte is more my speed. Darkness, the Sith, infiltrating, trying to infiltrate the Jedi, finally getting a Star Wars show where the protagonist is your usual antagonist, bad guys winning. That excites me. But Skeleton Crew on paper is also quite intriguing. As Nick said, it's fresh. And I like fresh Star Wars. I know some people, it rubs you the wrong way and it's not your Star Wars and fuck Disney, but some fresh Star Wars is what we love the most, and its name is The Mandalorian. So let's give it some time. Let them breathe. I mean, let's hold our judgments until we actually see the shit.
Yeah. I think that what fans may need to recognize, and what Disney definitely needs to recognize soon, like we'll have to see how these next few shows go, is that it's very possible that The Mandalorian was an anomaly. Like, The Mandalorian had the cachet and the excitement and the viewership that it does because it was the first ever piece of Star Wars content of its kind. And there is something to say about being a brand new piece of content
first
for
to
a
market.
very, well, not even first to market, but like for a very well recognized franchise. Like people love Star Wars, and they were like, "Oh, Star Wars is on TV, and it's not just a cartoon." And they were like, "Okay, like we'll get into it." It's also very possible that like people are only into that show, and they don't really fucking care about the stuff that is associated with it.
You're right. It's hard for people like us, me in particular, to recognize that. But Nick is 100% right. We all have to remember we're the anomalies, okay?
Yeah.
We're the anomalies. Even though we all think everyone should worship at the Church of Star Wars, we're the ones that have taken it beyond just being a science fiction program. We're the ones that have, in some cases, myself included, have kind of based my entire existence around Star Wars and who I am, what I got into, and who I ultimately became. So he's not wrong. And if you think about it, Nick, they did the perfect thing with The Mandalorian. What did they do? They picked a guy that looked like Boba Fett but wasn't Boba Fett. That's instantly going to intrigue everybody, even casuals, because they're going to look at that helmet and go, looks familiar, looks fucking rad. I don't know what it is. I want to check it out. And then what was the hook, line, and sinker bait at the end? The big Grogu reveal. That's right. Episode 1, that premiere episode may be the greatest TV premiere of all time, if you think about it, because it sucked a ton of people in just based on the advertising, and then it exploded word of mouth with the Grogu reveal.
Oh yeah, I mean it launched an entire streaming service, and like that's something unlike we've ever seen before. You know, like Hulu was out for years just putting out like, you know, episodes of network TV that you missed because you don't have cable anymore, and like that was their business model. Their business model was from cable to streaming. That's what Hulu was. And it subsisted off of that for a long time, and that's kind of still what Hulu is known for. Netflix was a DVD rental delivery mailbox thing, and then when they came out with their streaming service, there was really like people adopted it because they were almost forced to. They were like, Netflix was like, oh, well, we don't have this DVD anymore, but it's on the streaming service. So if you pay for the streaming service, it'll be there. And there was another one where there wasn't like one big piece of property that like launched Netflix's streaming service. For Disney Plus, The Mandalorian launched that platform to a degree that we had never seen before. And it puts you in an odd position, because it's like, is your expectation that every piece of Star Wars content that comes out is now supposed to meet or exceed that level? And I just don't think that that's going to happen. Like, I think that the only thing that will reach the peak Mandalorian, like the release Mandalorian fervor, would be a made for Disney Plus Star Wars movie, like a full length film is released only on Disney Plus. Because I bring this up because there's one data project in my head that I've been thinking about for Star Wars, and what it is like, I want to essentially track the eyes that are on Star Wars from when TFA released to now, and like basically say like, okay,
see
TFA
the decline.
But it's like what, and maybe that'll make people understand. Like maybe if people can see like, hey, in 2015, we had sold X amount of, you know, like TFA made X amount of money in the US. It made $1 billion just in the US. You know, figure out what average ticket price was for TFA. And then you can say this many people in the US saw TFA. And then you can see that trend through TLJ, through Rogue, through all of the other movies. And then you do the same thing on the TV side. And you can see where your audience has, like how your audience has been moving. And like it is important for people like us to understand where the market is going for Star Wars. And it's also important for the people at Disney and Lucasfilm to understand that too. And I'm sure that they already have those numbers, and I'm sure they already understand what their adoption rate is.
You would hope, because if people don't know what he's talking about, data analytics is life now. If you don't employ it in your business, you're going to lose. And I would say at this point, if you don't employ it with some form of AI, you're going to lose. So we would hope they've been doing this. Otherwise, don't keep talking about it, because they're going to steal the idea, and then you can't sell yourself to them for a $250,000 a project consultant. So, you should be pitching this to Jennifer Corbett or the CCO himself, Big Dave Filoni.
But yeah, I mean, because I think that there's this expectation of the hardcore fan base that like, oh well, people are definitely going to watch this because it's linked to the Mandoverse, or people are definitely going to watch this because this character's in it. But I just don't think that like people like we assign too much value to stuff like that. And I think that what we need to understand is that there is a decreasing need for Star Wars, or a decreasing desire for Star Wars in pop culture right now, especially on the TV front. And like the numbers don't lie about that. Like the numbers show a declining viewership for Star Wars TV over time, and that is also being matched by Marvel's declining TV numbers over time. And it's because you're hitting this point in pop culture where you have too much of one thing. Like, you want to know why GTA sells $1 billion in the first week when it comes out? Because the GTA game releases once every 12 years.
Good point. That is a good point.
Know, like when a GTA game comes out, it is a spectacle. It is something that garners the attention of all gamers, or all people who have an eye on pop culture and video games, not just the hardcore gamers, like the people who buy COD every year. And I think that's what's been lost in Marvel and Star Wars recently, is like they're no longer events, they're expectations. And when it's an expectation, it's only an expectation for the core fans. Like, and I just don't think that like
I'm with you.
I understand that.
I don't think Star Wars is oversaturated from a TV front, but your point still makes perfect sense when it comes to expectations, so on and so forth. On the other hand, they are doing what you want with the movies. So if we're gonna,
well, that was I don't even know if that was voluntarily.
We're going to be talking about that in a second here, but
yeah.
I think when a Star Wars movie finally hits theaters again, it will become that huzzah moment you're looking for again.
I do think so, and it's like it's because it's been so long,
right?
Like. And when it comes back out, well, one, what you're going to have is a mix of familiarity and event, because the first movie that's going to come out is the new Rey movie.
100%.
As far as we know, or as far as I've seen, 15 minutes ago.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it in like 5 minutes. So yeah, you're right.
Yes. So, that's supposed to start filming soon. So like you're going to have this thing where it's like you have familiarity and you have an event again. Like you have Star Wars in theaters for the first time since 2019. And realistically, that film's not going to release till 2025. So it'll be a 6-year layoff. It's going to be with a character that everybody's familiar with, and it's going to be picking up on a story that everybody knows where it ended. So you have a good mix there. But what's happening with the TV realm is we've already kind of talked about that. It's all become very convoluted and hard to follow. So.
Yeah, unless you're a genius like us. But the problem is to run a business and to keep getting money to make new projects, you got to convince the non-fanboys.
Fanboy alert.
All right, you got to convince the non-fanboys to keep coming back. People like me, I'm greedy. I want as much as I can get. I want Mando season 4 as soon as possible. But I think the fact that we're now not going to get that until later in 25. So we're looking at, again, another 2-year break on Mando. That should revitalize that franchise a bit, I would hope. So sticking with the TV universe, when it comes to the Acolyte coming out of the Bestman Bulletin and MSW camp, they're both thinking that this show is now going to kind of slide into that, where Andor released, kind of the Ahsoka window, late summer, end of summer, start of fall, which I guess it can make sense, especially when you consider our last point here. And we're getting a shot on Twitter from Jennifer Corbett, who I believe she helps run the Bad Batch franchise, if not most of Lucasfilm animation, where she is saying the final mix session for the Bad Batch is done. So that means Bad Batch is pretty much gold, ready to rock. And Nick, I believe... Now, who knows, because there hasn't been any promo yet. Because if everyone forgets, we got Bad Batch literally the turn of the year last year. Bad Batch Season 2, I think, debuted the second week of January.
Oh,
Yeah.
January.
It was as early because I remember I was still on my fucking 4-week break that probably makes people in corporate America want to stab my eyes out. But yeah, I'm coming up on that, by the way. I got one more week of work after this and I get 4 weeks and nothing. And it's not like you suckers where you're like, oh, I'm going to take a few weeks off and you still have to like check thousands of emails every day. You're going to have, inboxing explode. Not me. I won't get a fucking shit. Yeah! Academia for the win. So I could see Bad Batch kind of eating Mando's spot from last year, that March release, potentially. Because I just, like, Nick, they're not, we're at the holidays now. Do you see them launching any legit promo campaign for Bad Batch at this point?
Probably not.
Yeah, so,
I mean, there's just, like, unless they already had stuff
canned
that was cut and already created for promotion, they're probably not going to start it now. Like there's, you're less than a month out from the end of the year. People are already starting their vacations and stuff like that. Like the idea of putting out anything meaningful in terms of marketing for a show that could come out in January or February is just not going to happen. So yeah, I mean, I think that release window wise, you're probably pretty close to where we'll see
March, April, spring something. That'll give us a few months to piss around and then Acolyte. Because everyone has to remember this is a non-celebration year. I know it's been a bit of time since we've actually skipped a year for Celebration. I believe, it's going to be a year skip because it hits Japan in 25. So there's not going to be a big hubbub over the summer this year. Which, maybe they reserve Bad Batch for then. And I would assume Tales of the Jedi will probably keep its springish slot. I believe that was almost May the 4th last year. So, but that's what you got confirmed official coming for Disney Plus in 2024. So Andor, you can, like we told you last week, take that shit to the bank. It is not hitting the platform in 24. We're going to start with, it sounds, I'm going with Bad Batch, Acolyte, Bad Batch, Acolyte, Tales, Skeleton Crew. Why not? Let's get fucking crazy. Or maybe they do 2 animated shows back to back. But that's what we're looking at. I'm excited. Remember, Bad Batch Season 3, this is it. So we should get some meaty narrative there, even though I still believe they could have taken this another few seasons. So who knows if that's more of what Nick was saying and it's cost cutting. It's like, hey, we can't keep the eyes on these motherfuckers. It ain't worth it. We're just going to end it now and make sure we have a great story told. Nice, quick 3 seasons.
I think that what they realized with Bad Batch is that people are more interested in stuff like Tales and like Visions, and they're cheaper to produce, and they don't have to do it themselves.
I think Tales is fantastic. Like, I think that is in-house. Visions is not. Tales, I believe,
Visions is all out.
But Tales is something, and this is another one that I don't want to blow our wad too much. But on the special topic journal we keep, I want to do like, hey, what good Tales of the Jedi candidates, and we can kind of talk about those. And a tease there, one that I think has to happen at this point in time, especially because of where the character was left and the future being so unknown, thanks to death. Baylan Skoll, perfect fucking candidate for Tales of the Jedi. We're not gonna dive into it because I want to save that for a special topic, but. That show is awesome based on what we saw last year. And remember, like, just the love it gave to Count Dooku and finally, like, rounded out his character to where he made complete sense. I mean, complete sense. Jumping ship, what he did, killing Yaddle, all that. It felt earned. And that's the crazy part, my friends. They made Dooku's turn felt earned in 3 fucking shorts. Mm-hmm. And we couldn't do that in a 2.5 hour long movie. Or a trilogy, for Christ's sake. So we're not going down the prequel rabbit hole again today, but just take that to heart. Think about that. We got a much more clear reason that a Jedi, a very skilled Jedi, a very a Jedi held to very high standards in shorts. It was very clear why he would turn his eye. I mean, it made sense. I was rooting for him to fuck over Mace Windu and them because they're all a bunch of idiots, and he could see through the hubris. Okay, Nick kind of teased this one here, so that's good. We'll kind of get through it, and then we'll get right into the fun here of kind of speculating how Dave's influence would have affected the sequel trilogies. But if you were not paying attention, Nick's like, well, it's pretty clear now which movie we're going to get first, as we've been saying all along. But today, from the Film and Television Industry Alliance site, it's a production list site, a listing has popped up, Nick, for an untitled Star Wars project, Oh Boy Chinoy, feature film. Yep. The sequel follows the events of Rise of Skywalker and will focus on Rey as she builds a new Jedi Order. So clearly it's the Rey movie. And the important thing here is that it says April 7, 2024 shoot date.
Yeah.
So some of the weird things about this listing, and obviously we're behind a paywall, so who knows? I don't see Stephen Knight as the writer. That's a little suspect. It's still listing Justin Britton Damon, which they would have to. Like, I'm not stupid. I mean, if you contribute anything in Hollywood, you're probably still going to get your name in the fucking credits, even if you get fired. So, I mean, just look at the end of TFA. I think what's his name, Michael Arnold, and literally he quit. He didn't write to you. He started to, and then he probably saw the writing. He's like, whoa, this is weird. We're not doing a cohesive trilogy. I'm out. But he still got billed as a writer of the film. So I guess it's not that big of a deal, but this is legit. I mean, this is a real site. So if this is the case, as Nick said, if they are going to start Principal in April, that's awesome, because that means 100% December of 25, we're returning to theaters, or at least people like me, to finally see a fucking Star Wars feature film on that big ass silver screen.
Yeah, I think that 2025 is the most, I mean, like what usually principal photography for movies takes between 3 and 6 months. So that puts you at a latest end date for filming October of 2024. So October of next year. That gives you
almost a year.
Like over a year for post-production and marketing. So I think that the most likely release date is going to be holiday 2025. I would be super surprised if it was not holiday 2025.
I mean, if Bob hasn't learned his lesson, I mean, the only and still, I do believe Solo's problems were because of how close it was to TLJ. Because if you think about it, Star Wars releases are typically in May. I mean, the entire prequel released in May. I believe the entire original trilogy released in May. They shifted the sequel to come in the holidays, and it was fantastic. I'll never forget going to see TFA. My wife's pregnant. She's fucking throwing up because, I'm blowing trees in the car like a great husband would. She's puking because the smell's too strong. We go there. I watched a movie, and I was like, I felt just this pressure release off my shoulders. I was like, thank God it's good. Because I was so worried, Nick. I had so much PTSD from my experience with the prequels. Remember, I cut myself off of Star Wars. I did a Luke. I did an Obi-Wan. I did a Yoda. I exiled from the franchise. And then I heard that Disney was going to resurrect it. So I was like, uh-oh, it might be time to wheel him back out. Where's Bail Organa to come drag my ass out of this cave? And sure enough, it was JJ. And he did. And TFA gave me so much hope, but it was awesome. It's like, it's Christmas time, new Star Wars. It's actually good. Let's go. I'm going to name my kid after Rey. I mean, it was a fantastic time. So we got to keep it December. I love December Star Wars releases.
Yeah, I think that in December too, you don't have as much competition. And I think people always look at Solo, and like the Solo release window was definitely an issue, but they also don't talk about the competition that was in the theaters at that time. Like Endgame had released a week before or was releasing a week after.
That was that Infinity or Endgame year?
I think it was Endgame.
Either way, you're probably right. It's probably one of them, and it wasn't.
Massive. Well, no, it was Infinity War, because Infinity War was 2018, and then Endgame was 2019. But it was also Jurassic World. Like there was a Jurassic World thing coming out then too, and then something else. It was like they placed this movie in the middle of like franchise hell. It was like you had Infinity War that came out like right around the same
it was
time.
So much. It was the negativity from TLJ. It was the negativity from the extended production and how much money they had to spend. Ron had to come in and save it. And you know how people are. I mean, listen, FUD is a very powerful tool for the weak-minded. I mean, look what's going on. FUD is used all the time. If you don't know what FUD, fear, uncertainty, demand, you can put shit out there and convince large swaths of the population that bullshit is true. I saw a great graphic on Bango's Instagram today. Essentially, it polled people asking, hey, do you think things are better now or back then? And everyone answered back then, but they're actually better now. Like, I'm talking important shit. Not this woke crap a lot of people get. I'm talking like jobs, economy, shit like that. It's all better now, but if you ask the regular person, Nick, what are they going to say? Fuck Democrats, fuck Joe Biden, they're ruining the economy, inflation's out of control, when everything is way better than it was. But that's my point on FUD. And you could FUD up even Star Wars. If you put enough bullshit out there, there's going to be enough people that will not take it upon themselves to go watch it with their own eyes. Or to go experience it, and they'll just be like, oh yeah, well, they said it sucks, so it sucks, it's terrible, Star Wars is over, Han Solo is a commie. That type of shit. So it's a very powerful tool. Like I said, if you wield it well, you can convince a lot of people of a lot of stupid shit that's not really happening. Hey, Nova brings up a good point here, and it sticks to our schedule for this film. If everything kind of plays out as is, and I hate to bring this up, 2024 in this country could really fucking get nuts. Not even could. It is going to get insane over here. I hope everyone is prepared for that. Like batshit nuts, 1,000 times what 2015-16 was. It's not even going to be close. Like literally, Palpatine is ready to rise to power. Mm-hmm. Could take this place down. So who the fuck knows what that could do to movie productions, this, that, or the other thing. I mean, you could have a real life exodus of intelligence in this country over the next few years if what goes down in 24 that could go down.
Good.
So,
yeah.
I mean, who knows with these schedules, but back to Nova's point, if everything kind of plays out the schedule, I think he's right. We probably get a tease at Celebration Japan for this movie.
Yeah, I think that would be the most appropriate time to do it for sure. And I think if you really think about their planning, if they're actually planning this, the thing that kills Star Wars in terms of box office all the time is international. Because nobody fucking cares about Star Wars in the East.
Well, the Far East. Like our brother over there on the island, they're a big fan. I mean, Europe, I think, digs it a bit, but you are correct.
Oh no, yeah, I'm talking about like
where all the
China,
where the billions,
Japan, Korea, India, Indonesia, like
where all the people are at. Like Nick's not wrong. I think what is it? Like 3/4 of the world's population is essentially in Asia.
Yeah, I mean India, stuff like that. Like Asian countries don't care about Star Wars, and I think that one thing that they had that Lucasfilm has been very intentional about is marketing Star Wars to that audience. Like Visions had 2 seasons, and they were done. Like the first one was all done by Japanese animation studios. Visions season 2 is a mix of other animation studios where there's typically low interest in Star Wars, and they're having the celebration before the re-release of Star Wars in theaters in Japan. Like they have finally understood that like it doesn't like you can make $200-300 million in the US, but if your international is only 150 million, it doesn't matter. Like you have to be able to pull in international to win things. And here is an example. I was talking about the Solo release and how it got fucked by everything around it. Here are the 3 movies that released within a 3-week window of Solo. Uh-oh. Infinity War, April 25th. Bruh. That was less than a month before the release of Solo. Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom released a week after Solo, and Deadpool 2 released a week before Solo.
Good job, Bob! At least you cleared room for Mary Poppins 2. And
I'll tell you, like, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to international. Infinity War international box office, $1.3 billion.
Oops.
International only. That does not include the US. Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, international, $892 million. Deadpool 2,
And that movie
international.
sucks.
That movie sucked. That's the worst Jurassic
it's
movie
awful.
of all time. It's terrible. Deadpool 2, international, $416 million.
Deadpool.
How much do you think Solo made internationally?
I'd be shocked if it made 100.
It made 179.
Ooh.
It made less than half. Less than half of Deadpool.
Yeah.
Like, and like you can look at that 2 months after this movie released and understand what your issue is with Star Wars as a property, is that it has great Western appeal, but it has terrible Eastern appeal. And like and I think that they've recognized that, and they've done a good job of addressing that. And that's why you've had visions, and that's why you've had, you have the upcoming Star Wars Celebration in Japan, because they know they need to activate that audience. Like 2018 showed them like, oh fuck, like, yeah, we can put out the core Skywalker franchise and make $1 billion, because when we put out this core Skywalker franchise, we make $800 million domestically. Like that, and I think that they're kind of starting to understand that they really need to activate those other audiences to be able to make Star Wars, like Marvel, to really have that like market penetration in that area.
The broader appeal. The sad thing is, dude, I mean, as long as a hiatus this is going to be when this movie comes out, because it is rooted in the sequel lore and it is Rey, I still don't think it's going to blow off the doors like a traditional Skywalker saga film will.
Yeah, I mean, potentially not.
It's already going to get the woke label and all that horse shit, so we know that. But I will be there day one with bells on, as they say. All right. Well, speaking of the sequel era, it's time.
Mm-hmm.
I want everyone, first and foremost, to check out my amazing rudimentary Photoshop skills on the graphic on the live stream right now, okay? It's unbelievable what I've achieved with Adobe Express Online over these past few months. I mean, look at that composition work, Nick, right? Filoni's head grafted onto Rey's body on the official poster. I mean, it looks like we paid a professional to do it. So I just wanted to
100%.
I wanted to tip my hat to myself. Thank you.
Yeah, pat on the back for sure.
So here's the deal behind this, and I know I set it up a little bit. Nick and I kind of talked offline. It is mostly going to be free flow. I've written down some bullet points just in case I forget. I've written down a lot of bullet points. But we're not necessarily here to say that Dave would be making wholesale changes. I kind of framed my ideas through the lens of Dave would have still been CCO, so he would not have writing capabilities. He wouldn't have had directing capabilities. He would have been doing exactly what he told us he was going to be doing last week. I will now, at inception, during conception even, I am going to provide advice. I'll be a sounding board. Come to me. I will make recommendations. So I'm kind of taking it that way. And, you might argue that some of the suggestions I'm going to make might be wholesale, but I tried to channel the man in the hat from Pittsburgh. We share that DNA, and to try to figure out what would have been the slight tweaks, maybe the bigger nuanced changes that he would have made in all three films. So naturally, we're going to start with TFA, Nick. And as we kind of teased before we went live here, and the first thing I have written down is the least amount of Filoni fix. And I think everyone could agree with that. You might argue, hey, TFA, too formulaic, too much of a New Hope clone. But in the end, we all agree it's the best. It was the most cohesive. And quite frankly, I don't care how similar it was to A New Hope. It felt like Star Wars. It felt familiar. It had a sense of hope, a sense of promise, even more so that, hey, there could be some really cool fucking stories coming out of this. I think it did a good job setting things up. So we don't really have to take the hatchet to this one too much, Nick, but I will, just to kind of kick things off. I do think if Dave was involved in The Force Awakens from the get-go, and they which we now know they clearly had ideas to make Finn a Force user, or at least to showcase his Force potential, I do think Dave would have nudged for a few more hints at Finn's Force potential, because quite frankly, I was one of these guys when I watched the TFA, I never picked up on that. We always said the intern was always in my ear, like, motherfucker, Finn's got the Force. You can tell, like, he snaps the conditioning. He can just work a lightsaber pretty well with never having training. When he hears the Starkiller base blowing up the system, he senses it and turns around. I'm like, fuck you, you're stupid. But we find out in Tross that, that really was supposed to be a thing. Boyega himself said, that's kind of where JJ wanted things to go. So, Nick, I do think, sticking with Finn, I want to hear your thoughts here. I think Filoni would have suggested more hints towards his Force potential, but also to kind of potentially deliver these hints, maybe give us a flashback of Finn's past and why he had the trooper PTSD, why he wanted to get out, why he was feeling like this isn't right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that one of the good ways to do that would be maybe quick, I wouldn't even call them flashbacks. I would almost just call them like mental flashes, like when there were scenes in that movie where he gets headaches and we're seeing what he's experiencing real quick in his head, wow, exactly. There's an image, there's trauma, shit like that. Yeah, something like that to establish his past in a way, because obviously that's something that he is struggling with at the time, and it's also something that us as the audience has no idea about either. What I would have really liked to see too is you have these two characters in Finn and Rey who are both coming, or both discovering their sensitivity to the Force near the same time. And I don't want to say they're having these Force mind melds, but the recognition from both of their sides, understanding, and both of them really expanding their ability to feel the Force outside of their own selves, maybe recognizing
wink,
that in
wink,
each other,
almost hey, you feel that too, type of thing.
Yeah, recognizing that in each other. And I think that would have done a good job of establishing the relationship between those two characters, which clearly is kind of brought back around in Tross, to establishing that relationship to a point to where it's the expectation is that it will be continued, continue to grow in the next two movies, where I think it was a little light-handed in TFA. It could have been a little bit more pronounced. And then that way, your expectation going into the next film is okay, there should be more character development between these two. That doesn't mean that there wasn't going to be further character development between Kylo and Rey, because obviously those two characters are your co-leads essentially in this film trilogy, and there was going to be a lot more development of those two characters. But you can also have small furtherances in development between Rey and Finn at the same time.
I love that, because what I'm thinking right now, Dave's all right, listen, Finn, he definitely has the potential, but he's not even close to Rey's affinity for it. So we've never really seen a Star Wars movie focusing on Force users where you have a pair, but one is so much more in tune with it, so much more adept at tapping into it. The natural skill, very much like the Skywalkers, the Palpatines, the Kenobis, the Windu, so on and so forth. And then you have someone more like Sabine, where it's a bit more latent, takes a little more effort. I would have liked to have seen how Finn and Rey kind of worked through that. Would Finn maybe have gotten jealous, or would have Rey tried to pull him along, things like that. So yeah, I think more time could have been spent focusing on their bond, not necessarily as great friends, but great friends who also share this connection
Yeah.
All right.
It's like are going through a similar journey in their life.
Yeah, it's like a coming of age tale, but with the Force. So yeah, I'm down there. All right, Nick. Other things I think Filoni would have pushed for, especially because it's rooted in the OT. I'm thinking extended, if not more, scenes of Han and Leia, specifically hashing out their past before he croaks. I mean, I would have almost liked to have seen a Solo family flashback, young Ben, some of the issues, kind of sped up to where we see how the family dissolve and why they have the pain they have now, that they've been apart for so long. So what about you? You think we got a little more focus on the Solo family through Dave?
I think that the best thing that could have been done there without like focusing on those characters too much, because I know the entire, purpose of the sequel trilogy was to essentially hand off the torch, and the reason why these characters weren't on screen more is because they did want to focus more on the sequel heroes, Finn, Poe, and Rey. And I do think that there could have been a little bit more. And the way that I probably would have done it is like an extended scene at the Resistance base when Han and Chewie like kind of first get there. You get that moment between Han, Chewie, and Leia where like they step off of the ship. Leia's standing there, like, Chewie gets the big hug from Leia, and then you just kind of have this really short kind of conversation between Han and Leia that doesn't.
Hey.
New
hair. I mean, that's literally it. Hey, new haircut, new jacket. That's it.
Yeah. So like you take that, like you can still have that scene.
Sure, but extend it or develop it, right? Yeah,
like have it to where like you spend a little bit more time at the Resistance base, and you do have another scene where it's like them kind of sitting down and having that conversation and really understanding. And like, at some point there, like she says something like, well, I had to send him away, or something like that.
Yeah, okay, good. That's what I guess it wouldn't even have to been a flashback. I'm just, like I said, I'm greedy. It would have been fun to see them young with their family having problems. Maybe Uncle Luke showing up to take Ben, shit like that, just to stroke the nostalgia. And I think Dave definitely would have pushed for a little more nostalgia stroking in all films, clearly, but this one, when you had the two. Really the first time any of the mains from the OT were together in these new movies for real. We know Luke technically wasn't there. I'm down with that. Nick, I kind of waffled on this one because in the end, I do feel like he was playing the Palpatine role, and it's not like Palpatine had any fucking development in the original trilogy. So I guess I'm going to bring it up just to hear if you want to swat this one down. But do you think Dave would have potentially pushed for a bit more Snoke mystery development, mostly via First Order scenes, maybe Kylo and Hux bitching about him or talking about him, maybe another meeting? Or do you think Snoke was kind of done well, not really meant to be the big bad ever, just like Palpatine technically wasn't until the very end? Or do you think Dave would have massaged some of the Snoke stuff in TFA?
I think that there was an opportunity to. I think ultimately what happens to Snoke in this trilogy. Here's what I'll say. Ultimately, what happens to Snoke in this trilogy, I have no problem with, and I wouldn't change too much around his character.
Like I didn't even know if this was worth bringing up, but
yeah, I do think that even though his ultimate fate is to be usurped by Kylo,
right?
I think it's still it would have still been interesting to get more like backstory on him. And the reason that I say that now is because ultimately when we get to Tross, that is where a lot of the wholesale changes may take place, or the larger scale changes. And like the reason that I would want more development into Snoke as a character, because ultimately in my mind, I think it would serve the story better if he wasn't a Palpatine clone.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think that ultimately it would serve the story better if Palpatine was uninvolved in this
100%.
film,
and that,
or in this trilogy.
That's going to be our biggest wholesale change, 100%. So I dig that. Kind of, this is what I had envisioned in my head. It would almost be something. Maybe it's not Hux and Kylo, because clearly they weren't friends. Maybe it was Hux and another general, just like, hey, where did this get? What's the deal with this guy? Like, where did he come from? And maybe he'd be like, oh, I heard he was a part of the Remnant or something like that. Just something like that is kind of what I'm looking for. Because I agree with you. I think Snoke served his purpose. And like I said, if he was supposed to always be the new emperor, he still shouldn't have gotten that much screen time or development, just like Palpatine in the original trilogy.
One other thing that I would like, and this is kind of setting up something that I'll expand upon when we get into the other movies, is the connection between Kylo and his grandfather, you know, specifically the Vader portion of his grandfather, was so pronounced through this trilogy, but it was never actually capitalized on. Like,
good point.
There was nothing like there was constantly this homage and this you know, this worship given to his grandfather, but like in no movie did you ever pay off on it in any significant way, other than like he modeled his helmet in his garb after his grandfather.
It completely disappears in the middle movie. And then
exactly.
the helmet comes back in Tross.
Yeah, and like that's like there's a lot of middle movie problems, and like I'll get to it there, and it's because you have a director switch and a story writer switch, but like what I would have liked to see, and you'll see why as we go on, but like have there be substance behind the worship, you know, like even if it is just in his head, but leave it ambiguous, like leave it nebulous to the point to where it's like you understand that he actually is hearing something. Like you understand that like when he's talking to his grandfather, that either of his own making or through the Force, there is something speaking to him. And like
that's a good point.
The obsession that he has is not obsession based purely off of stories that he was told by his parents. It's obsession rooted in either his own mental instability and his own, like trauma from his upbringing and understanding where his family comes from. So like an internal representation of Vader within himself that he hears, or that there is some sort of like latent Force connection between him and the essence of Darth Vader.
That would have been awesome.
That is still out there.
It's his fucking granddad. I mean, because at least me, I always went like, what the fuck was wrong with Han and Leia and Luke? Did they never tell Kylo who this guy was and ultimately what he did and how his life ended? Like, well, why is he jerking off over this mask? Does he not realize it's melted for a reason? He lost.
Yeah.
Like he lost.
And it's like, I think that like, because ultimately like the story of Kylo Ren is the story of a tragic family, like having substance behind that mask and behind that worship like feeds into the tale that you're telling of this whole Skywalker clan. Like,
would you have wanted Anakin to eventually, maybe by movie 3, finally almost grab him and be like, hey, fuckhead, like, hello?
I think that, I mean, ultimately that's where like in the third movie, like you have these specters of Vader that are constantly invading Kylo's mind, whether it be of his own making or from the Force itself. But then in pivotal moments in the third film,
the real essence.
You have that.
Okay.
Exactly. Like you have Anakin Skywalker, the true version of Anakin Skywalker that we got to see in Ahsoka, like reveal himself to Kylo and really have him have an understanding of like of who he was as a person and what happened in his life. And then that way, all of this worship that he gave to his grandfather, all of this attention that, you know, was given to his grandfather and how he shaped his life or thought he shaped his life around his grandfather is then revealed to him that
we
like
get payoff.
Yeah, because you never pay off of that. No. And like that was something that was always really interesting about his character is the obsession with Vader, and it just fizzled. It just went away.
Well, you're right, because even Rey used it against him in the first movie. It's like, I can tell you're a fucking whack job because you never think you're going to be like your hero Vader. I mean, it was not just a prop. It was something that clearly was affecting who he was, how he acted, and even Rey could sense it and knew she could use it against him. So I agree. I didn't even think about that one. That was spot on. Really, I think I've got one more thing on TFA, and then, you know, if you have any, we can finish, and then we'll get into the middle movie here. But my last thing here is I think Dave would have made them pay off on the fucking Maz and Luke's lightsaber backstory. Like, none of this bullshit, a story for a different time. I think she just whips it out and explains it right there while Han's standing there, and here we go. Because that's another one, Nick. Obviously, not a big deal. Probably not as important as the loss of the Vader theme. But as someone like me who's a lore freak, I'll never forget that scene. When she whips out, I'm like, oh, fuck. How'd that get there? And she literally says, I think Han says, how the fuck did that get there? And she replies, hey, that's a story for a different time. And then that story never plays out. So,
well, like, that's another one where, like, I would be okay. Like, I'm okay with that scene if the payoff comes, which it never did. Like, and that's where a lot of the issues lie when we'll get to TLJ. Because if you say that in TFA, which they did, and then you have that be a like, it was a very frantic scene. Like, if you remember in TFA,
I agree.
The lightsaber, they're running around the fucking, like, at a certain point, like, the hallway that they're standing in where the exchange happens collapses, and like, okay, maybe you don't have enough time at that moment to tell the full story, but like, there are moments that could have paid that off.
Well, right here, Nick,
and
because Finn gets it next, right? I mean, Finn gets it from the castle because Rey never takes it. She runs away from it. That's how they get separated. Finn is given it to defend himself. So there was an opportunity once he gets to resistance base with Leia and Han and be like, you don't think Han or Leia would have recognized that fucking hilt?
Oh, 100%.
And then right there is where you get, hey, where'd that come from? We know Maz makes it to resistance base. Oh, now we can finish the story. Something like that.
Exactly. Like, I have no problem with how they did it in TFA because the intention of it was to be like, you need to take this now because we don't have time for me to give you a dissertation. But you have to, like, because of how they did that, and because they didn't pay off on it, it's a huge miss. And like that, the only thing there is like, I'm okay with it in TFA if you come back in TLJ and be like, look, you actually pay off on what was promised. You pay off on the story being told, whether it be to Rey or Finn. Like, I don't care who it's told to, but as long as the payoff comes for the audience.
All right. So have we Filoni-ized TFA? You ready to move on?
I think I'm ready to move on. The only other thing, and this is a pretty large change. The only other thing that I could have seen him saying, like, hey, let's pull a U-turn here, let's throw him a curveball, is you don't destroy Starkiller Base. Because that is a significant enough change from the original trilogy to where it's like, oh wow, okay, so like things are similar, but they've taken a different tact. And it also allows you a little bit more flexibility with your scene locations in TLJ. Because I do think that ultimately, while the moment with, with Holdo was really cool, I feel like having your a majority of your entire cast stuck on a ship that's just being shot at for 2.5 hours can get a little bit weird.
Oh yeah, don't worry. I've got, like I said, I'm trying not to spin him as wholesale, and listen, as we get into TLJ, I'll put it out on the record. I'm man enough to say it. I like TLJ. Okay, I'm not one of these people that thinks it ruined my childhood and all this other shit. I don't think Rian Johnson's a communist. I actually think he's quite a talented artist. I do have some issues with some choices. Not necessarily. I've said this a million times, and we'll bring it up here. Biggest beef is how Luke was initially presented as a cocksucker. In terms of him self-exiling, that makes complete sense to me. His two masters did it before him. It's just what they do. But yeah, let's get into it. So I just want to get that out there. I do not hate this movie, but there are going to be a few more recommendations here than in TFA, but it's because we are playing the role of Dave Filoni, CCO. We are trying to make these cohesive, all right? So there is going to be a little more wholesale action going on in TLJ. But once again, before we start, everyone, bask in the glory of my online Photoshop skills. Look at that.
Mhm.
Look at that. I even got his head up under the hood, and you can only barely see Mark Hamill's forehead still. That is some quality shit.
Top notch.
All right, Nicky boy, here we
work,
go. Listen, like I know some of you are probably expecting a flamethrower to come out. Like I said, I don't want to speak for Nick, but I'm pretty sure he also does not hate this movie. It doesn't make him vomit. I'm not going to say it's one of his favorite, but for me, it's not the worst sequel movie. That's The Rise of Skywalker. But here we go.
Yeah.
And I think, Nick, this picks up right with your idea not to blow up Starkiller Base. My first thought was, I don't think Dave, like Ryan wanted to, would have picked up right the fuck after the events of TFA. I think we get some breathing room. All right. So
Yeah.
I'm saying Luke and Ray have been together for a little bit. All right. So a little more time has passed from TFA to TLJ. I think that eliminates a lot of the horse shit in TLJ. Like you said, the old playing tag in space. Okay, I mean, it makes sense for the scenario. Is it the most exciting? Not really. Even though that's all Empire Strikes Back was too. A lot of people forget that. Empire Strikes Back, it's one of its main narratives was a space chase. Okay?
Yeah.
So it
didn't last quite the whole movie,
right. but a good chunk.
Yeah,
I mean, all the way up till
Yeah,
Bespin. So a good part of it. But Nick, that's the first thing I think changes. And let me get a follow up, and I want to get your thoughts here. But I do still think, even though it doesn't happen literally an hour after the attack, I do still think, very similar to Empire, maybe people are seeing where I'm going here, kind of like they did with TFA. We might as well just keep repeating shit. We do still see a devastating first order response on the Resistance, but literally not an hour after Starkiller Base is blown up. So more like Battle of Hoth. The Resistance has resettled somewhere. You know, they had to get out of Dodge. They've resettled, but they've been caught again, and they're about to feel the pain of their win.
Yeah. So I think that I agree. I 100% agree with you there in terms of extending the time between TFA and TLJ. And whether it's because Starkiller Base got blown up or not, I don't care. But there needs to be more time, because what time gives you is character development, off-screen character development that you can address in the movie as these characters interact with each other. But that line in itself was one of the primary problems with TLJ, is that the main characters of this trilogy did not interact with each other almost at all. Like, you had the first 10 minutes of the movie where like Finn and Poe are interacting with each other, but then like after that, everybody, like Finn goes off on his merry way to Canto Bight. Like
it becomes narrative soup, and you're right in line with me, man, because I said next up we get very defined narratives, but the good guys stay together. So here's one. Let me know what you think here. Finn, Poe, Rose, BB-8. They are a narrative thread in TLJ. They stay together throughout the movie. You know, they can still go to Canto Bight and all that stupid shit, but instead of the stupid shit, maybe throw in some Legends bounty hunters chasing them on Canto Bight. You know, kind of Dave, he's known for that type of stuff. Let's weave in some nostalgia. Let's get in some Easter egg type of deal. But what do you think? Finn, Poe, Rose, BB-8. They're a main narrative in TLJ with Dave.
Yeah, no, I think that is a good way to go. I think that having that core group together is similar to ESB, right, where you have the droid.
Yeah, you had Leia, Han, and the droids.
In the droids. So like you're all set up there in a very similar fashion. And it gives you the opportunity to have character development and growth between those, like between those four core members. Right. And I think that's something that is just like ultimately what this trilogy suffered from, is like you have this core group of characters that never actually got to develop together. No. Like there was not enough time in universe for them to actually build bonds and grow together as a unit like you did in the original trilogy, and the fact that like, they stay separated for far too long.
Dude, I don't even think Rey and Poe have their first face-to-face until the end of TLJ.
Yeah, it's like it's the most ridiculous thing ever. Like you see these two characters that have essentially been
the heroes of the resistance. Like the one guy blows up Star Killer, he becomes a general, and then the other is your wizard. But yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, and they don't fucking meet. So that is one thing. My other thing is, intentionally or not, and I don't think it was intentionally, like Ryan was telling his own story, but there was no follow through on the interesting storylines that were left open from TFA into TLJ. And here are the ones that I'm primarily talking about. I mean, we talked about the Vader thing already with Kylo.
Completely gone.
Ryan literally took that storyline, which was interesting, and he threw it away. Like he completely ignored it.
Same with Kylo's helmet. That was exactly. All. Ryan's like, fuck you. Your face is not staying behind the helmet.
Yeah, it's a disservice to, like, I don't want to say it's a slap in the face to JJ because, or to JJ and Chris Terrio, because I don't know what the process of writing these films. They could have been writing these movies at the same fucking time for as far as I know. I have no idea how that worked. So I don't think that Ryan watched TFA and then wrote TLJ and was like, Darth Vader shit gone, Obi-Wan Kenobi shit with Rey gone.
It just wasn't important to him.
Yeah, and he may not have even known that was going to be in there. So he's like, well, how am I supposed to follow up on it if I don't know it's there? But the other one, like I just mentioned, was the very intentional choice to have Obi-Wan's voice in Rey's vision from TFA.
Rey, these are your next steps.
Yeah, like literally completely ignored. Done. And like not only was that ignored through TLJ, that was also ignored through TROS too. So in a way, JJ fucked himself by not following up on that.
Yeah, at that point, he's like, "What's the point? She's already a master under Leia, so okay."
Yeah, it's like you have literally
she don't need Force ghosts.
And that's the thing is like what JJ, like I thought, like again, it's just my opinion, and I know that people have different opinions. I thought that what JJ was doing, planting these seeds of these historic characters in the minds and hearts of the characters that we're now growing up with, was a very interesting way to weave in the story of the original trilogy into the sequel trilogy, and those were wholesale ignored by Ryan. Like the thread of Kylo's link to his grandfather and how his grandfather has influenced his decision making in his life and everything like that was very interesting, and it made sense for the character, and it was wholesale ignored. And the fact that JJ intentionally put in this scene with Rey touching this legendary lightsaber, like you have to think about what happened with the character of Rey, with the lightsaber, and what that scene meant. Like you had a lightsaber that essentially was laid dormant for what fucking God knows how long,
decades.
Like since Kanata had it. Like this character of Rey comes into contact with it and is immediately hit with visions and with like
that's right.
Like,
the Rain vision, the Knights of Ren, that's gone.
The Knights of Ren,
you're right. Holy
like,
shit! I completely forgot.
Like all of that is gone. Like the fact that was never followed up on in any meaningful way is painful, because there was a lot there to grow on. And not only the fact that like
fuck, I forgot Knights of Ren completely left out of TLJ. You're right. Just gone.
Completely left out of TLJ. Just not.
Yeah, Filoni wouldn't have done that because they look cool and they have lore potential. So yeah, I can't believe I've completely forgot about them, because of they're literally just cut out of the trilogy if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean they're barely there. So like you needed to, like that whole scene with Rey being the one to like connect with that lightsaber, and then also in the forest, she is the one to win the Force battle for that lightsaber from Luke Skywalker's own nephew. Like that is the link between like hearing Obi-Wan Kenobi's voice, Luke's primary one of Luke's first mentors when he was going through his Jedi training, the one who was always presenting himself to Luke through the Force after his death, that being the voice that talked to Rey, being able to pull the lightsaber away from Kylo, the blood relative, the ancestral relative of Luke Skywalker, whose blade that was, like, that story, that was the story of TLJ. Like, those scenes set up TLJ for those two characters. And the fact that they were wholesale ignored just it makes no sense. Like, don't you think Ben Solo, aka Kylo Ren, is not racking his brain why did the saber not choose me, the blood relative of Luke Skywalker, and the one who was heir apparent to Darth Vader?
Yeah, because then he just says, that saber's mine, right? And they fight over it on the ship, and they try to break, or they do break it in half, but it's never explored in the mystical way that you're saying. Like, why? Yeah, I get it.
And like that being wholesale ignored is almost unforgivable. Like, it's you were given, and like, again, like, who the fuck knows how, who knows how the writing process worked for these movies? Who knows if Ryan was even, had purview into, or like, had some view into what JJ was writing, but like, it feels odd that like, that's the handoff. Like, JJ wrote that, put it on a platter, and like, hey, this is a part of the second movie for these two characters, and it went nowhere. And I'm not saying that like, you need to, you need to change the entire character arc for those characters in TLJ, but it should have been addressed. Like, you could have taken TLJ as it is now and addressed those moments in meaningful ways in that movie, and it just was never done. So that's the biggest thing for me in TLJ, is like, on a silver platter, you had a very interesting storyline that involved both the Darth Vader angle of it and incorporating, like, understanding Rey's link to the Skywalker lineage through her connection with that saber, were wholesale ignored. Well, yeah, and I think that is
kind of leads into one of my bigger wholesale changes, and one that, you and I, when we were still guessing at what TLJ was going to be like and who really is Rey, I think we finally got to the point where we agreed it would kind of make the most sense if she was a lost Solo. Like, either Leia had her in secret and hid her because of what happened to Ben, shit like that, because they are far enough apart in age that it could have been a tryst with Han. He was coming in off a smuggler run to, get a little wanka waka waka. She has Rey, but she's instantly terrified. Like, fuck, I just brought another one of these things into the universe. I just saw what happened with my son. He broke bad. We got to ditch her. Like, that's going to be the best thing for her. Kind of what happened to her and Luke, right? I mean, that's essentially, it's like, well, fuck. You just let this asshole procreate. We got to stuff these things at two opposite ends of the galaxy. So I wrote down, Nick, I'm like, hey, if Rey has to be a somebody as she ends, at least lay seeds for her being a hidden Solo, the sister of Ben. Like, I think that would have scratched the legend itch that a lot of people think are missing from the sequels. You would have had that Solo family and the chaos that kind of fell upon them because of their Force potential. It would have followed closer on the, the Jason and Jaina type of stuff. I don't know. I'm okay. I was okay with Rey being from nowhere, but knowing Dave, knowing how he loves the parallels throughout the franchise, the connective tissue, in the end, when it comes down to it, she either had to be Rey the long lost Solo or Rey from nowhere. Going to Rey to Palpatine, it's jumping the shark big time. So,
and I think that, like, one thing that Dave, like, bringing this back to like Dave's mindset, like, Dave has always respected George's understanding that Star Wars is about family. Yes. Like, George, I mean, go back to old interviews of George. He says it all the time. Like, Star Wars is about family. Like, and whether it's the family that you choose with, like, the story of Star Wars Rebels. Star Wars Rebels is all about the family that you choose. And, then you go to the OT. it's about the family that you didn't even know about. Like the OT was about like your familial link to, Luke and Leia's familial link to the Scourge of the Galaxy and Darth Vader.
And a little incest for at least a movie and a half.
Yeah, a little bit of that in there too. Sometimes the family part of it's not all, roses and how it should be. And then you go back to the prequel trilogy, and it's a mix of both. It's the family that you choose, or the family that you have been given to with Anakin and Obi-Wan. Like those two were like in those movies. Do you think that George writes into that like, you were my brother for no reason? No, he's establishing what he said for 20 years up to that point, that Star Wars is about family and establishing the family link between Obi-Wan and Anakin, and then starting the family that will be the saviors of the galaxy in the OT with Anakin and Padme, like that actual familial bond and building there. And like there needed to be an understanding, and like Dave understands that the Bad Batch is the family that you chose, like the family that you have grown up in. That's the whole story. They're a family.
Yeah.
And you think that that's not going to come back around with Crosshair in season 3? It will 100% come back around.
That hard ass, he's gonna get soft, especially because Omega's with him. She's gonna work him over, and by the time all the bros show up and he realizes Tech is gone, he's gonna do the right thing. That's a fantasy. You're 100% correct. And Nick, it plays even more into what happened in Tross. Like if you're gonna make him a dyad, the fact that they're long lost siblings, like come on, that's just like it's low hanging fruit
it's right
here.
The fuck there.
It's low hanging. It makes way more sense than we're just a dyad in the Force. Now it's literally you both came from the sacks of the Skywalker jizz. So
and what are you doing? Like, what are you in that instance? It is literally the definition of Star Wars. It is the Skywalkers versus Palpatine. Mm-hmm. At the end of it. And like, what the fuck? Like, how could you end the Skywalker trilogy any better? Like that, like, obviously, and then
like, she would have been a real Skywalker anyways, people.
Yeah. Like the Rey from Nowhere stuff would have been cool, but the problem is that you've already done too much in the first movie to establish that there is a connection.
Yeah, she came from somewhere. Like, you don't show her getting dropped off and screaming "mom" if she's a nobody. So
yeah, it's like Rey from Nowhere, but let's focus on the fact that she was abandoned on this planet.
We wrote it so well. We're like, yeah, Leia would have had to ditch her. Maybe that was Lor Santeca dropping her off. Like it made sense. Our version of what we were hoping to learn about Rey made sense. And you are right. I love Rey from Nowhere. That's always going to be my Rey because that's what we have to do. But knowing Dave, like you said, and his studious ability to figure out what George meant with all this, how he would have done things, I think you're 100% correct. It does become someone that gives her that provides that family dynamic that Star Wars is known for, either traditional family or the family you find. So yeah, I'm all about that, but I do. And that's probably the biggest wholesale change I have for really the trilogy is Rey Nowhere. Okay, we can do shit with that, but Rey, a hidden lost Solo, to me, that's a little more exciting, a little more intriguing, and it explains some of the stuff that they had to crowbar in Tross, the dyad in particular.
Yeah. And it also gives so much more weight to, like, if she doesn't know she's a hidden Solo, can you imagine, like, obviously there's a lot that, like, once we get to Tross, it's just a mess because a lot of it has to do with, like, just Carrie not being there. But can you imagine the weight of that as a viewer? As a viewer, if you know that Rey is the lost daughter of Han and Leia.
Well, dude, it could have been Rey, I Am Your Father Part 2.
It could have been. But here's, like, imagine how powerful it would have been if Rey still doesn't know who she is, but Leia is training her knowing that she's my daughter, and knowing that, like, if you know that you're my daughter, then your life is at more risk than it even is now. Like, in her intentionally training her, hiding the fact that she's her mother. Like, that is such a powerful moment in that film to understand that, like, I love you so much that I can't tell you how much I love you. Didn't
we posit, Nick, that Han wouldn't have even known? Like, Leia would have hid this from everyone, and that would have made it even more exciting when you get the reveal, and sad, because then Rey would have watched her father being killed by her brother.
Exactly. Like, all of that interworking.
Sign us up!
Like, all of the interworking between that would have been so just... Like, you want to talk about emotional Star Wars, like, that's it.
Yeah,
that's
man, it really is. I am your father, but maybe I am your mother. Or, hey, this is how it goes. I mean, you're 100%. Like, let's go. Like, let's fucking kickstart this shit. We are. I never said the prequels or sequels would be rebooted. We're doing it right now.
Yeah. But, and the thing is like, you can largely keep the storyline that was told in TLJ, while still having that attached to it.
Yeah, you don't pay off on that until the last one, right, Nick?
Yeah, like that is a continuing storyline that like gets developed through, like the downtime that you have with Rey and her training, and the downtime that you have with Kylo before the end of the movie when everything really fucking goes to shit. Like, you have those character development moments that are already built into the way that movie plays out, except now you're like, their development means so much more because there's so much behind it. And really, if you look at like, how does Rey's character develop through TLJ? Like, Rey's character goes from like, we don't know who you are to at the end of it, like, you're nobody, which is like, isn't really a big upgrade on we don't know who you are, because we still don't know who you are, except at the end of this film, we're just saying like, not only do we not know who you are, it doesn't even matter who you are. Like, that's how
what
Rey's
if dude, you got me like, I'm all excited, even though this is never going to be real, but
is it never going to happen?
What if it was Kylo the one that figures it out and reveals it? Like, Rey, I am your brother. Join me.
And that would have been...
Join me in Grandpa's melted helmet to take over the galaxy as siblings in melted helmet.
I mean, but that would have been a very cool moment for him, though, too. Like, even if he didn't reveal it, like, he has the moment similar to how Vader has it at the end of ROTJ, sister. Sister. Like Vader figuring that out, like, in his mind, just saying sister, your twin sister, and then him understanding, like,
oh shit,
sister, she's my sister. Like, I knew that there was a link between us. I knew that there was something, and now I understand it. And like, that colors, and like, that would have made way more sense at the end when they're in Snoke's throne room and he's reaching out to her.
Yeah. He's
reaching out to her with the understanding that, like, maybe I don't tell you here, but maybe you feel it in our force connection. I'm
figuring it out, and we're going to get out of this mess. Yeah. I dig it.
Dude,
I dig this shit, man. Fuck. That just gets me even more depressed about the sequels now. It's like, damn
and
it.
It's like,
it was so easy, too. It was so easy to do that.
It was so easy, and it was so ingrained in what George always wanted Star Wars to be.
Right.
And that's what Dave does.
Yeah.
Dave understands what Star Wars was always meant to be. He was straight out of George's head. And he would have recognized that. Like, he would have been like, oh, you have these two characters that you have already established have some sort of connection. Like, it's already been established.
Well, yeah, I mean, Nick, so I was like, let's leave all the Force walkie-talkie shit in TLJ, because that was cool.
Yeah,
but
it makes sense.
Yes, it's like, yeah, there's a reason you guys are open to each other, because you have the same fucking blood.
Yeah, like, it makes sense. Like, so... I think that, like, leaning more into that, like, actually leaning into that in TLJ and having those characters explore themselves in a very deep and meaningful way, like, in really following up on the seeds that were laid in TFA, like that, like, you can keep almost all of the action the same. Like, you can keep the beats of the movie the same, but really have those internal character journeys leading towards somewhere that was established from the first movie. Like, that's all I wanted, like, it is just to have those character journeys make sense from what has come before it, Like,
I mean, really, if you've been paying attention, just it should have been similar to Empire Strikes Back, just like the first one was similar to A New Hope. It's not that hard, except for these little tweaks. Nick, I got a few others, and these are so low hanging. I mean, you're just gonna be like, well, yeah, of course, Dave would have taken his pencil and crossed that right the fuck out. Easy one here. No saber throw horse shit. You know, Luke.
Yeah, that
was like pratfall bull. I mean, I'm okay with comedy in Star Wars. Notice I didn't say anything about change. I still think the beginning of TLJ is great. I know it seems silly, but I'll never forget how fucking nervous I was watching that bomb run, and I liked Poe acting like a slapdick with Hux. But yeah, the Luke saber throw immediately gone. Treating Rey like a dog, gone. That would not happen. But I do still think, just like Yoda kind of was at first, he would have been very hesitant to take her on because of what just happened to, if we're sticking with our new plot, her brother. Okay? He's still going to be like, no, listen, like, I'm here for a reason. When us Skywalkers get a little too overzealous, the galaxy tends to really pay the price. So I took myself off the fucking field because I fucked up with your brother that we're not going to tell you yet. So no. But we've talked about that before. The other one that I know Dave would have crammed in here is a dedicated fucking scene of Luke and Han feeling some feels over the death of their buddy. All right? Like, we literally get, hey, Chewie, where?
Oh, Luke and Chewie.
I'm sorry.
Chewie.
I said Luke and Chewie. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. I'm an idiot. Yeah, like Chewie and Luke needed more than just, hey, where's, oh, Han's not here. Okay, we get what happened. No, they needed to have like Chewie literally taking Luke's head and jamming it into his chest like we've seen him do. Like, kind of like when he says goodbye before the Battle of Hoth. Grabs him, pets his head like, moo, 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 moo. That type of shit. They needed to process Han's death.
Yeah, 100%. And like, I think that goes back to just like what you were saying. Like, I agree with you that Luke exiling himself fits narratively
it's who he is. It's what he knows.
Yeah,
I mean, it's what he knows.
Exactly. Like, if he's following the ways of his masters before him, like you said, that's exactly what they did. But the problem with Luke, like you identified, was the emotion was wrong.
Yeah,
like his emotional state was wrong. Like he was angry.
Yeah, an angry curmudgeon, and like Luke. Sure, he was a whiny type of guy, but he was never angry and anti.
Yeah, it was like, it was angry, but it was also disrespectful.
Yeah, he treated her like a pile of shit, and Chewie.
Yeah, and like he was never, like Luke, for all that he was never disrespectful.
No, he's not a dickhead, not at all.
And like, that was what always sat poorly with me about that film, is that like, you have this character who, if anything else, would be more emotionally distraught than he would be angry.
Yes.
Who is now essentially, like, the way that it is played in TLJ has just decided that he has forsaken the galaxy regardless
he's just like,
of what the
fuck
situation.
everybody, fuck you, fuck my sister, fuck Chewie, fuck Han. I'm taking my Force skills and going home.
Yeah, he's like, fuck it. Like, if everything burns down and the First Order comes to power and whatever, I'm out.
Thanks, Big Wood.
Where, like, in like, that just doesn't fit the character. Like, the character of Luke Skywalker was never one to be like, he would definitely be a sad sack, and he'd be like, oh yeah, he would be like Obi-Wan was in the beginning of Kenobi.
Okay, when you were done, I was about ready to say he should have been more like Ben in the fucking cave.
Yeah.
So Nick, this plays into my next thing with Luke, and I think you'll probably agree. I'm saying Luke would have actually left Acto to go see his sister, and knowingly, just like Obi-Wan Kenobi did, knowingly going to sacrifice himself to the Force to give the galaxy the resistance and ultimately Rey the juice they need to take the next step. So he doesn't die Force projecting. He does a Kenobi. He goes there. He confronts his nephew. He plays with him. Then he says essentially, hey, Go ahead, strike me down. I'm going to become more powerful than you can ever imagine. And
yeah, and what a fantastic way to mirror the original trilogy, where it's like, instead of it being like Obi-Wan is helping Luke the whole way through the OT after his death, like he's there as a mentor and a guide.
Just in case anyone hasn't figured it out, Obi-Wan's whole plan was always, once he learned how to achieve Force Ghost form, was to die, because it was going to be way easier to be with Luke at all times as a spirit. And that's what he's essentially trying to tell Luke's dad, like, hey, bro, I know you think you're actually going to beat me here, but this is all by design. I need Luke to see this. I need to become one with the Force. So take your best shot. I'm not even going to defend it.
Exactly. And what a fantastic turn it would have been if Kylo cuts down Luke, as he does, but in the next movie, Luke is in his head, and not as a mentor, but as like as somebody who's constantly like
why are you doing
this isn't right?
Exactly.
Like you know deep down that what you're doing is wrong, and and like then you would have the voices of, you know, Vader that slowly fades into real Anakin and Tross.
There it is.
And then you also have the voice of Luke Skywalker in his head. And like when those two fight, like when Anakin finally turns, or when Vader finally turns to Anakin, you have the Chosen One and the Chosen One's son that are in Kylo's head, and true understanding finally hits him. And like, and really there is this moment of like, of him understanding, albeit probably too late, that like, you know, he was driven by this desire to be able to do what his grandfather never did, but truly understanding that doing what his grandfather never did was not becoming like a bigger scourge on the galaxy. It was becoming the savior of the galaxy. Right. And like,
that's what I always could never understand, why no one ever told him, like, hey, by the way, you do know that he's the reason the Empire fell, right? Vader, you know, come on. So, damn it. You made a great point, and I was going to try to trail off of it, but I just deleted it. Sorry. Yeah, I honestly think you're on to something with Luke being in Ben's head. I believe Colin was going to do that in the third movie before he was like, fuck this, I'm out. Like, because, you know, Luke was also, obviously, he knew Luke was dying. I don't think he wanted Luke to die. It's one of the reasons he bailed. But he's like, all right, Luke's dead. I'm going to have him not only obviously work with Rey and keep training her, but I'm going to have him at times get in Ben's head and just like Nick said, kind of tweak his tits. Like, hey, big dummy, slap, slap, wake up. You really thought I was going to try to kill you? Get tough. Pull up your bootstraps. That type of shit. So,
I mean, I think that like, there was a better way to do that.
One other thing for TLJ, and then we'll see if you have any more. And this is kind of a silly one, but I know one that Filoni would have definitely edited. Akbar gets a better death than just randomly sucked out of a space window. Okay.
Yeah, I think that he would have had more reverence given to his passing.
Yeah, he did not just suck out. I know people still get bent over. Like, listen, Leia's a Force user. We've seen Star-Lord survive multiple space jumps at this point in time without a spacesuit on. So clearly it's not as deadly as we thought. I think I've seen motherfuckers in like For All Mankind, I believe, survive out in space for a little bit. So if Leia is essentially the Chosen One's daughter, I can kind of get over the whole Mary Force popping shit. But Akbar needed a little bit more than just, hey, was that him getting sucked out the fucking window? So, I mean, you don't take one of the great admirals of the Battle of Endor. It's a trap. I mean, literally one of the most random characters that has memes, sayings, shirts, all sorts of shit for him. And his death is just becoming a random bit of debris that flies out of the Radiss's window.
Yeah. I mean, that's not cool. And, you know, there's nothing else for me, but I do want to address one thing that I think a lot of people may be thinking about is like, what about Canto Bight? What about Canto Bight? That sucks.
Yeah, you can still do it. Just throw some bounty hunters in there and make it more interesting.
Yeah, because I think that like that's some shit that Filoni would do though. Like the Canto Bite, even as it is now, like Filoni would probably have okayed that, because Filoni, like in the stuff that Filoni does now, there's always like some weird
new
like,
planets.
Like,
like Dave's gonna jump on the opportunity to potentially influence a new planet in Star Wars. So I like I said earlier, Canto Bite can stay. You just have Finn, Poe, Rose, and BB-8 there. But let's throw in some bounty hunters that people are like, oh shit. Well, there's there's Dengar becoming, he's going through his transformation, or hell, maybe Boba Fett, he might be a little old at that point in time, but there's potential there. Maybe he had a baby with Fennec, and it's Fennec Fett now, or Fett Shan. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm with you. I think Canto.
Yeah,
Canto
he would have used
stay.
it as like a cameo heaven. Like you're in a fucking casino, dude.
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
There would have been cameos everywhere. You would have seen fucking so many people.
Yeah, you probably don't have slow scenes talking to these like horse things, or you worry much about the broom boys, but Canto Bite 100% would have been a part of that.
Yeah. Right. So I agree there. So like I think the biggest, we definitely hit on all of the big stuff for TLG.
Well, Nick, that means it's time to move on to, in my opinion, the biggest tire fire of the sequel trilogy, and quite frankly, over the years, I've become more of a appreciator of the prequels and a scholar, if I will. The Rise of Skywalker may be the worst Star Wars movie for me at this point in time. I know Nick, he's going right to AOTC. I get that. Yeah. I get it. But Tross, when you really think about it, it is fucky. Like it is not good. And then we understand the reasons for it, but even some of the choices that JJ and Terry or whatever his name went with, you're just like, what? Did no one at Lucasfilm fucking look at this and go, really, dude? I guess Ian could get a pop going, but like I said, we got to get the big poster reveal. There it is. This one is not my best. I tried to replace Kylo's face in the poster this time because I didn't want to be accused of covering women and people of color's faces, because we know how the world works these days. But there he is. Not my best, but we're here. We've made it to Tross. And I'm just going to kick it off with the easiest of fixes. No Rey Palpatine, period. She's either the lost Solo or we stick as a nobody, and we get some explanation through Leia in a flashback. And obviously, bye-bye the resurrected Palpatine. Go.
Yeah. Somehow Palpatine has not returned, for sure. I mean, the biggest thing for sure is Palpatine is not there. I think that where Kylo ended in TLJ was actually a very good position for him to have ended in, and for the storyline for him to continue. Because at that point, like if we establish the Vader voice in his head, and like him striving to be what his grandfather never could have been, like he achieved that. Like he truly achieved that at the end of TLJ. And by having another like force, like, oh, well, there's a dude above you still, like you have done disservice to that character journey. Like you have essentially cut the knees out from Kylo for no reason other than like you didn't want to use him as your primary villain. So yes, Palpatine is gone.
Yeah, what I put out there is like as a replacement, because I think ultimately, and I think you probably would agree, Kylo at some point, just like Vader, was going to have a redemption, probably at the cost of his life, learning the lesson the hard way. But I think Colin was running with this, but would you want another Sith master to kind of pop up, maybe still an Exegol that no one knew about? What if it was Maul? What if he made it through like George wanted to? No, okay.
No. And here's what
Kylo stays the big bad throughout. And so,
but the big thing is that Kylo's downfall is not of somebody else's making. Kylo's downfall is of his own making. It's like, at the end of TLJ, he gets everything that he ever wants. He is the leader of the First Order. He is in charge. Like for all intents and purposes, he is in charge of the galaxy. But he's also 26 or whatever. He's young. Like And what he didn't understand is his ultimate downfall is that like when like every Sith's problem is like when you're at the head, everybody wants you dead. And it doesn't matter if it's Hux, it doesn't have to be other Force users. He is now the head of a galactic-wide organization that is bent on oppression and control, and he's not ready for that responsibility. So he starts to see like within his own organization that people are acting outside of his purview.
Well, it kind of happened, right? Hux started to spy and give information to the Resistance because he hated Kylo.
Yeah. And then it's like, and then like, it's a thing that you see in other movies where like these like the organization would build beyond his control. And then everything that he ever wanted, he realizes that he's achieved it. But everything that he ever wanted means that he has no control over anything anymore. Like the monster of the First Order has grown so far out of his control that like while he may be its figurehead, there are people trying to usurp him. There are people that are blatantly disrespecting his own orders, and there are offshoots of his own organization that are starting to go do things that he doesn't want them to do. And he realizes that like what I have built is going to destroy me. And he grapples with it and he fights with it. And ultimately he realizes that becoming everything that Darth Vader wasn't, like there's a reason that Vader saw that. Like there's a reason that the good side of Anakin came out and realized that like if I do this, it's not going to be my making, it's going to be my unmaking. And like really seeing him understand that like the Vader that he heard in his head was not leading him towards redemption. It was like leading him towards his downfall. And like then that's when like the voices of Anakin and Luke become more prominent. It's like, do you understand why he didn't walk down that path and why Darth Vader chose what he chose at the end? Is the understanding that darkness and that evil will never be a path to salvation. It will only be a path to ruin. And like at a certain point, he needs to be the one that destroys his own creation of the First Order. Like he needs to be the downfall of the First Order.
So Nick, does he essentially do the Vader to himself?
I would say
he takes himself out to take out the First Order?
I wouldn't even say it would be like he's taking himself out.
Or does Rey still ultimately have to battle him at some point in time?
Yeah, and like I think that like Rey has that understanding too, because like now we have established the bond between these two characters, like the familial bond between these two characters. When they're together in a scene, she's hitting him with that constantly. Right. She's like, that this is wrong.
Just like Luke was to Vader. Like, listen, man, I know the good's still in there. I know you're my dad. I can sense it. Okay, got you.
Yeah, like and then you have that mirror of ROTJ where it's like, Rey knows now.
Everyone,
like Rey knows
if
the
you just
connection.
made the original trilogy, it would have worked out.
But it's like it would have been like
it
would have mirrored it, obviously.
Yeah.
But like it would have done it in a very different way, in a very interesting way, because it's like they're fighting. Like you could have that same. I don't get like have that scene on on like where they're fighting on the remnants of the old Death Star. Like I thought that was still a cool scene between those two characters. But like imagine it with the bonds that have connected them now being familial, and like the understanding from Rey's side that like he knows that what he's doing is wrong. Right. And like and like,
but she also has committed, I'm going to have to kill my brother if he doesn't figure it out. Just like Luke was like, I'm going to have to kill my dad if he doesn't figure it out.
Exactly. And like, but then on Kylo's side, the whole movie, Luke's in his ear, and the whole movie, the voices of Vader are starting to warp into the voices of Anakin, and that understanding is starting to creep in to Kylo, but he pushes back against it. And he's like, no, I know that what I'm doing is the path that I'm supposed to be on. But then every step that he takes, it feels less right. It feels less right until you have that moment where it's like, it's the ultimate point of discovery. Like in the end of ROTJ is in an interesting position because the leverage is in favor of the rebellion. Like the surprise attack comes, and you're in a position to where like at a time it feels squirrely. Like at a time it feels squirrely. Like, wow, they may not make it. But imagine if it's flipped. Imagine if it's the resistance that's down and out, and you have the entire First Order fleet hovering above. The home world of the resistance, and it's literally like the trigger can be pulled, but Kylo stops it. Ben stops it, not Kylo.
Right.
Like Ben realizes that
Rey gets him to snap out of it at the last minute.
Yeah, and like the just like in ROTJ, the beam, like it's powering up, the beam's coming up, and instead of it being an explosion that kills the Death Star by the rebellion side, it's the leader of the First Order himself taking down his own monster because he realized that, and maybe it is at the cost of his own life. It's probably at the cost of his own life. Like obviously,
he almost does the Holdo maneuver now.
Yeah, exactly. Like he Holdos his own fleet to stop the biggest mistake that he would ever make. Would
you maybe the hard change is when he thinks that he's killed his sister. Like Rey's maybe he thinks he kills her and that's when he breaks, or does she break him like Luke through battle and just beats him so down, maybe taps into the dark side a bit and he finally realizes it? Or does he potentially think he killed her and that's when he goes like, oh fuck, what have I done?
Yeah, I think that both of those could work really well.
Either one I could see Dave doing it.
Yeah, because like if it is like the expected, like, or like he feels her force essence wane after like he kills her, quote unquote,
and then that's when he's like, oh my god, you are my sister, like you are a part of me.
The immense sense of loss, and like then truly the understanding of like what if like the Vader, like what have I done?
Mm-hmm.
Like the moment that Vader is looking at Luke on the floor,
the head turns
with electricity running through him, like truly that moment of understanding for Kylo, like what have I done? And like looking around him and seeing that like this monstrosity is is of my own doing, and like really understanding that to a level that he didn't understand prior. And then, no,
you're right. I mean, that's the same thing. Like, listen, Vader got his ass kicked, lost to his son, but still went to the side of his master. It took a little bit more, sun torture for him to finally click and go, okay, enough's enough. Like, what am I doing here? So, all right. No, I love that. I mean, with Tross, and again, we would had to have gone into this with the same thing. Carrie Fisher dies. Do you think Dave adds any wrinkles to her in this movie? Does he just say, you know what, fuck it, she dies off screen, we'll deal for it and we'll deal with it in dialogue? Or does he still try to use Leia in an impactful way with her son and her daughter potentially, if we're running with what we've been doing this whole segment?
Yeah, I think that, man, that's such a tough one, because I think that he would definitely want to try to use her as much as possible, but I just don't know if he goes to the lengths that they did with Tross, where they, like they use cut footage and everything else like that. I almost feel like she, man, I don't know.
Well, I think you've done a fantastic job of band-aiding Tross, but the Leia stuff is... It's hard. It's almost impossible, because like what could he have done? She was supposed to be, the formula here was Han, TFA, Luke, TLJ, Leia, the last movie. But, obviously she died on a fucking plane and they had to do what they had to do. But she was supposed to be the big player. And I think in Colin's script, she may have potentially died at the hands of Ben, trying to work him over or trying to get him back. But yeah, I don't even know if it's worth to try to figure out what Dave would have done, because everyone's hands were so tied Because as Nick said, you could only use leftover footage from TFA. That's it.
And because like you can't kill Leia off screen.
I know, but
you can't like, and it's because so then it comes down to Dave. Like, well, how long do you drag it out? Like, how long into this movie does she pass? And like, what really, and like what they tried to do is like make her passing impactful, and like she dies right as Rey stabs Kylo in the stomach. And I think that like in that, like that was a good moment in that film, is like, you know, like his mother passing.
I agree.
Is coinciding with like his, like a huge trauma to his life that could have killed
probably would have done something similar, I would imagine, where you know, Kylo feels it, and maybe now even, well, I guess Rey kind of felt it too, because she's the one, as soon as she stabs Ben, she's like, oh fuck, what'd I just do? I just felt Leia kind of take a shot to the ribs too.
Because it's like what you want with Kylo in Tross is what are the moments that to his realization
start chipping away at that ignorance armor.
And like one of those moments is his mom's death, 100%. And it's like, how do you do that in an impactful way? And I think that like what JJ and Chris did in that movie is like they did it in an impactful way for how that movie was made. And I think that Dave would have tried to do the same thing, is like, how can I take the worst situation possible, like in real life, and make it as impactful as possible in this movie? And I think it's like that's the first piece of the armor that comes off.
Yeah, this would have happened early on. I mean, I could even see it, Nick, where maybe he gets a beat on their location and drops in with the Knights of Ren, just fucking goes through and starts battling his mom and takes her out. I mean, he tried to take her out in TLJ already, so we know he has it in him, even though he paused before he opened fire on her. You would think now, as Nick's saying, he's all fucking scatterbrained because he's going power crazy. He's all paranoid that people are trying to usurp him. So he's rolling through the camp and fucking takes her out, and then is like, oh fuck.
See, what I think a better way to have done it is like, if he's rolling with the Knights of Ren, like it would have been really cool to see, like, and this is going to sound weird, but I'll explain it, is to have one of them kill him without him knowing.
Oh, her. Yeah.
Kill Leia without him knowing. He feels it.
Kills the Knights of Ren.
and then goes back, and like when they come back together, he knows, and then his first response would be, I was supposed to do that. That was mine to do. And
kills the guy immediately.
Right. He would have killed him immediately. But then after that, like, there's the initial anger of like, that was mine.
Yeah.
But then just immediately, like the pure sadness
back in his quarters or something, we see it.
And then and then you just see that, like, not only did that, like, it killed her, but it killed a part of him. And like, and it like really sets into him, like that's the first moment of realization, or like the first moment of questioning.
No, you're right. You're right. That was way better than my dumbass take. So I'm glad you picked that one up there off the floor. It was pretty poor on my part.
Because it's like it gives him the opportunity to to show both of those emotions.
Yeah, look like a hard ass.
Like immediately.
No,
but then like. Yeah, like I feel like that would have been such a cool way to
mean, honestly, that's really the big stuff that would have helped Tross. I would have liked to seen an actual land battle instead of fighting on the triangle of a Star Destroyer. You know, let's keep Poe up there doing the space battle shit, but let's get Finn, Poe, what's her name? Connix, or Leia's daughter's name. Let's get them in kind of a ground skirmish. Hey, Return of the Jedi. We had the forest battle, we had the space battle, we had the wizard battle, and that seems to be a formula a lot of us like. So I would have really, that's kind of the only other thing. Obviously, Finn is much more developed in the Force at this point. Him and Rose probably actually have an actual relationship. But they are the leaders of the ground battle, kind of like Han and Leia were. And then Poe's the leader up there in space. And then obviously Rey doing her thing with the magic space people.
Yeah. And like, a lot of what we talked about right now is obviously around like how you would change the primary narrative from like a world where it's Palpatine to not Palpatine, and that mostly affects Rey and Kylo.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I think that what the situation that you're in now with Poe and Finn is that like Poe, and I don't think that they did a really good job in TROS of like really having that like really empowering Poe as the leader of the Resistance. No,
like he was now this time, Nick, like you said, instead of being with everyone, he now was with everyone, but as a general, he was ignoring his duties as leader of the armed forces.
Yeah, and like I really think that they needed to empower Poe as the leader of the Resistance in that movie, and like really not have him be like this bumbling, like I don't know what to do, but like really taking the lessons that he learned in the last movie and applying them to what the situation is now, and like showing him as that leader and showing him as like the inspirational force behind the Resistance. And then for Finn, it is like Finn is such a hard character to kind of like, what direction do you take him? Because like we were saying in the TFA part of it, like there's clearly force abilities that are latent within him. And what I would have really liked to see is like in those training montages where, Rey was training, like to see him in there as well, like to acknowledge that,
exactly. Like, and then we see him kind of not obviously coming to his full abilities, but through these ground battles, he's figuring out the tactics. He is doing some, maybe he gets his lightsaber, something like that. I mean, seeing, like we all love from the Clone Wars, a fucking Force user doing a charge. I mean, that, like, come on. He's already suited for ground battle. He was a fucking stormtrooper, for Christ's sake. So that's his area.
Could you, like, it would be so awesome to see him as a former stormtrooper who was Force sensitive and has now trained in the Force, running into battle against Sith troopers who are Force sensitive stormtroopers. They're essentially what he was. Like him, like fighting against his own kind from that era, and like showing that, like him leaving, like him breaking his conditioning and leaving the First Order and training under, like training with Rey and under Leia, like has put him in the position to where he's now leading ground forces against Force sensitive stormtroopers. Like that would have been really fucking awesome. But I think that would have been a really cool, a cool avenue for that character to take, is mirroring back to where he came from and really accentuating his journey through that storytelling.
I'm with you. Well, Nick, I think we did. I think we did a pretty damn good job at speculating what Dave Filoni, through his CCO role and the power that gives him, what he would have done to the sequel trilogy. And it honestly ggets me really excited. Too bad it's not real life. It's never going to happen. Sadly, these movies have been out for years now, many years now, in fact, and it is what it is. And, maybe I'm sure a lot of us will come to terms with it over the years, just like some of us had to have done with the prequels. But as Nick and I laid out, you didn't even need Dave Filoni in the room. You just needed Matt Haywood and Nick Caminita. Okay, so thank you. You can send us, your usual donations to where they go. We know we're awesome, but it's time to move into the fan segment, because that is how much we love our fans. And this week, the question of the week is back. I know some of you got a little scared last week when my holy brain forgot to post the prompt. We got it down this week. It's in line with our special topic. So we are asking all of you, kind of what would you have liked Dave to have done in the sequel trilogy? And hopefully all of you didn't just go all, and you actually gave us some pointed information here. So Nick, while I'm fucking around with the screens, you can go ahead and...
Yes, I have our... question of the week here. So our question of the week was, which sequel needed Dave Filoni the most? I have 5 of our responses here, and they are they're kind of all over the place. They're not all the same.
Okay.
But Beyond the Dune Sea kicks it off,
which
which
is motherfuckers.
which is the.
It's probably because
the
I went
podcast
and
run
talked shit on one of their posts today.
Maybe so. Yeah.
I was like, no, they made a great point about Asajj Ventress and Gennedy's Clone Wars. And they're like, look how angry Anakin was. Look at that. You could see. I'm like, hello? This is all I've been saying, people. Like a 2-minute short showcased Anakin's potential to fall to the dark side better than what we got in Rots. But anyways, we loved Beyond the Dune Sea. Thank you for the comment. Go ahead, Nick. Sorry.
So their opinion is, as much as I enjoy it, TFA, if it had been strong, if it had a stronger direction and foundation, the trilogy would have been much better.
Okay, these guys have nothing but bad takes. Don't tune into them anymore. Yeah, this is a bad one.
And they say, I think the cracks of TFA don't start to form until you get to the other films because it's presented in such a fun, safe way. But here's the thing. So like we just talked about it. It's like TFA doesn't have cracks. The other movies didn't follow up on the things that TFA set up.
It's an interesting argument they're making there. I mean, I kind of see what he's saying, but I personally felt that they like you said, things were set up on a platter to be handed off, and they were just like Luke and the lightsaber, whoop, over the shoulder.
Yeah, they were just thrown out of the window. So you can't really blame TFA for the fact that the other movies didn't follow up on the very obvious things that they were being asked to follow up on. That would be like if you bought a car from somebody and they were like, okay, make sure you do your oil changes, make sure you change your brake pads, blah, blah, blah. And then you don't do an oil change or a brake pad change for years. And then you call the guy back and you're like, this car fucking sucks. It's like, but is it that guy's fault? He told you exactly what to do.
Yeah. You make a good point. And so does Beyond the Dune Sea. Again, we don't rob anyone of their opinions. We just try to correct them. All right.
Yes, exactly. So Beyond the Dune Sea.
I think that's why a lot of
TFA.
people don't like us, because we are a little more in your face, a little more direct and explicit with our language.
Yeah. So their opinion is TFA. So very interesting. League of Extraordinary Sixthers says the most obvious answer is The Rise of Skywalker. And I think that we tend to agree with you here at the Star Wars Time Show.
It's trash, 100%.
Noir Kaiser FX says all of them.
Ooh.
And I think realistically, the entire purpose of this exercise that we just did here was to show that all of them could have used.
Of course,
Dave
but
Filoni's
I
help.
wanted the fans to be a little more specific, because you can't really do much with all of them. So moving on to our buddy here.
Yes, 2797 Studios, our good friend Bad. He says, easily Rise of Skywalker. TFA was good and gave us all so much hope. As much as I'll take shit for saying this, TLJ was good. Brought us the end of an icon. Definitely a bleak ending like ESB. Tross need real direction. Could have pulled it all together, but instead got lost.
And we always said that, Nick, right? Even after TLJ, he said, listen, we understand the polarization right now, but you still have a whole movie to kind of iron this shit out. And no, that didn't happen at all. It didn't happen at all. It was the complete opposite of what we were looking for.
Exactly. And then Ripik Tan here says, I think the whole trilogy would have been better off if he was involved or consulted from the conception of TFA.
All right, well.
Yes, we all understand.
Thanks for playing, everybody.
If he would have been there from the beginning, everything would have been amazing, but he wasn't.
Actually, I got Beyond sent us a video to watch, or I'll watch it. It seems interesting. A guy gives almost like Harvard level dissertation breakdown of the sequels and what they are, and I need to check it out, because I as much as I was having fun with them there, I do respect Connor and Seth and what they do. They're clearly not as intelligent as Nick and I, but they have a good time and definitely have a way better production.
And look, we understand that like what we presented is like, that is like what we think would be cool. Like there are 1,000 different ways.
Nick, we're right.
That these movies
just
could
let
have
him know.
gone
We're right. We know exactly what. Like I told you, I channeled him. We're from the same city. I know his essence. I understand his DNA. So what we said is essentially the exact verbatim words that Dave would have said if you asked him the same question.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
So we have channeled it straight from Filoni's mind to this thing. And here's one thing that we could like. People like Beyond the Dune Sea talking about TFA, like the hard part about TFA is like ultimately it's hard to say what Filoni would have done different in TFA, because TFA was the movie that like set the theme of what the trilogy was supposed to be. So like if you go back and you make massive changes to TFA, then all you're doing is just making your own trilogy. Like if you just say like, well, it should have been this in TFA and this, like these people shouldn't have been in it and this should have been the storyline, then you're not like fixing the trilogy. Like you're not fixing the story of the trilogy. You're just writing a different trilogy. So like, that's why what we tried to do with TFA was like understanding that like TFA was the ground level that set what the trilogy was supposed to be.
A little more massaging, a little more enhancing, a little more details, a little nuance.
And then like what we tried to do was like take what was done in TFA, which a majority of people who saw it and a large majority of the critics who watched it said was very good. I mean, it's the highest rated Disney Star Wars film, maybe next to Rogue One. Like critics loved it, audiences loved it. You can say that it was too close, but whatever. Like it set a good precedent for what it was supposed to be. So what we tried to do was like, how do you take what was done in TFA that everybody enjoyed and really
keep
like
going.
Capitalize on it?
Keep that momentum running. So, all right.
Yeah.
Oh, well. Can't win them all, but it is time for the top 5 Star Wars fan artist features of the week. We do it Nick drops them Monday night, StarWarsTime.net. Don't forget about that. Give us some clicks and shit. Hit an ad while you're on there. But the way this works on Instagram, StarWarsTime.show. Please use our hashtag StarWarsTimeShow, but more importantly, use the function add tag at StarWarsTime.show. That is the pool that young Nick pulls from to select the top 5 each week, which we then honor on Tuesdays as we close out the show. All right, my friend, who we got?
To kick off this week in the top 5, we have at mindtrick_photography. And what Mind Trick Photography is giving us is potentially a look into Vader's training regimen. This is how I'm taking this, is that
I like it.
Like
why not?
Vader, when he trains, he just kills stormtroopers. Like he knows that there's an infinite supply of conscripts out there that can be pulled into his service. So he's just like, you know what? I need some lightsaber training, so I'm gonna go chop up some stormtroopers. We got plenty left, so let's just continue. Like I'll just use these guys as lightsaber fodder. And it's funny to see he's essentially bisected one completely in half, and then the other one he's choking to death. That's just standing behind him. Vintage Vader just wiping out those around him that he feels need to feel his
exactly.
wrath.
You know, Nick, when I get frustrated, I may kick a trash can or bite my finger. Darth Vader takes 2 of his stormtroopers and murders them. So
exactly,
it sounds good. Exactly. I do dig it. And this is at mindtrick_photography, like Nick said.
Indeed. Next up is from at Tong Wars, and Tong Wars is usually known for his incredible Lego photography, that he uses this like reflecting pool near his house to get these incredible like golden hour shots with the reflections of the Lego figures coming up from that pool. But what we see here is a different take from Tong. So we have Lego photography still, but it is the Jeddah showdown. So what you see is a bunch of weathered stormtroopers and tank troopers here on Jeddah, preparing for the oncoming onslaught of the rebellion, or the rebel cell that's on Jeddah that has caused a bunch of ruckus. And it's just a really cool shot of these Lego stormtroopers like preparing for battle.
How can you not love
Jeddah.
Lego Star Wars minifigs? I mean, honestly,
They're so cool.
When I look at a shot like this, I just go, why the fuck did I start with Funko Pops, which are so big and clunky to carry around the shoot? Then I go to Black Series figures, which won't fucking stand up unless you nail their goddamn feet to a table. And then the Hot Toys, which are even harder to shoot because they're a bigger scale. I could have just went with these little fuckers because they're awesome looking, just like Tong Wars does in every shot. But I love Star Wars Lego minifigures, and that's why we love this shot. I mean, look at those little trooper buckets, the little shore bucket. They're fantastic. Tong Wars, get some.
Absolutely. At Tong Wars on Instagram. Next up.
You're on a Vader kick this time, huh?
Dude, these Vaders,
He is the
they all
man.
look
I mean,
real
he's
nice.
a sexy bitch. There's no doubt about it.
100%. And Umbra Toy Photos on Instagram knows that too. And we got a shot of Vader himself again wreaking havoc. It seems like he's just fighting. Like he might have made his way onto the Radis. I can't tell if that's actually Admiral Akbar or just another
it's a Moncal of some sort. Sure,
yeah. He's force choking a Moncal in the background. You can see his stormtrooper buddies fighting at his side, deflecting blaster bolts into people in front of him. But just the pose that Vader has with this awesome atmospheric smoke at his back that like fades into a red smoke off to the right of the frame. Just like the pose, the atmosphere, the intimidating presence of Vader, and the action around. Like this shot just sings with Vader's ultimate evil.
Looks great, and apparently this is the new SH Figure Arts Vader going around. I'm not sure what era Vader that is, but it does look like a damn good Vader. Much different than the Figure Arts Vader I have, which is much more Japanese looking, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But yeah, no, Umbra is a kick-ass mofo out there. Newer, probably within the last year or so, but great detail, nice scenes crafted, good posing, great lighting. So an account you definitely should follow at Umbra Toy Photos.
100%.
Here's Mr. 97 should just be a permanent marker on the top 5. The dude's so fucking good, and he produces so much content.
It's like every week I go through it, and I'm like,
there's 6 shots from him?
Like 97, I would say, 97 tagged us in 5 of them, but like he was just in the top 5. So there's always a break between 97 _
Did you see the Avatar crossover one? That was pretty cool, though. The scale he got with the little stormtroopers compared to the Na'vi. Loved it.
To the Na'vi, yeah. It was fantastic stuff. But what we see here from Robert is Neo Boba Fett, as we refer to him here on the Star Wars Time Show, on a battlefield. And this battlefield is just filled, like, what can you think of in Star Wars? It seems like 97 put it on. We got Gamorreans, we got Rancors, we got TIE fighters, we got stormtroopers, we got Boba Fett on here. Like, he's got all of these things on this massive battlefield. A Rancor is biting the head off of a stormtrooper. You got Gamorreans cutting down stormtroopers. You got a crashed TIE fighter there in the background, and then Boba Fett just standing victoriously on the body of his fallen foe, staring down on a victorious field of battle.
This is the daimyo everyone wanted in the Book of Boba Fett. Just, kicking ass, taking names, bringing all his toys with him. The nice touch here, outside of that kick-ass, 1/12 scale TIE chassis, is Boba bringing his little pet Rancor with him in the background. I like that's a nice little background touch, but awesome, strong pose on Boba. I love that he's taking out this one trooper literally with his boot on his throat. He's kind of sitting there like, oh yeah, how's that feel, buddy? Let's move on to the next one. Always dynamic looking scenes, great coloring, perfect lighting. This is at 97 _ parsecs _ photography.
100%. Next up in the top 5 is at Nick's Toy Picks with 2 S's at the end. And that one, or this one here, is of our good friend Luke Skywalker from Mando Season 2 finale, as he steps into that hallway shrouded by his Jedi tunic and his green lightsaber ignited. And then you just look at this, you can look at this shot, and you can just picture the entire hallway scene from Mando Season 2 in your head. Like, you just see him mowing through music, those dark troopers.
It's like just light guitar, ding dong dong dong. Still one of the fantastic, one of the top 5 Star Wars scenes, probably. If you really think about it, hell, that's a special topic right there, Nick. Hold on. Best Star Wars scenes. Hold on. I got my rainy day here. Go ahead, Nick. You can keep talking if you want to.
Yeah. Best Star Wars scenes. This definitely falls into it. And
that. All right.
What makes this shot is just like the way that Nick's Toy Picks kind of has the blast doors not all the way closed yet, but closing, so you get this incredible ray of light coming across the shot. The atmosphere in the background, slight use of smoke in the background, and just the pose, the minimalistic pose of just having Luke there with the hood up, the saber ignited, and that fist semi-clenched, because we know that he uses that when he gets into the hallway.
I've got that Luke right next to me. You can't see us because we're in small mode right now, but there he is. That's my guy, Mando Luke, just sitting there waiting for his picture to be taken. I should send him the Nick's Toy Pics because he ain't gonna get that treatment here.
So that's it, man. That is a fantastic shot here from @Nick's Toy Pics on the Instagram. That's the end of the top 5, and that's the end of our show for this week. All right,
my man. Let's do it.
Go ahead, Matt. Close us out.
As he said, it's been a long and fun one. So hopefully if you're here the whole time, you're not sleeping or wanting to slit your throats. We love you all, but we need you to keep recruiting those people to come to the SWTS, be it when we do the live streams, podcast platforms only, whatever you got to do. We crave the bodies. We need the worship. And when I say we, I'm never talking about Nick. It is myself and the little mouse I keep in my pocket. So in all seriousness, though, don't worry. You can always find us on the internet, StarWarsTime.net. We got our YouTube links there, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. You can get all that information from StarWarsTime.net. Not to mention, if you prefer podcasts, you don't want to look at our stupid faces. You don't want to see my rudimentary online Adobe Photoshop Express art. Then make sure to sub to the podcast on a platform of your choice, because we are on the best ones. Spotify, TuneIn, Pandora, Stitcher, SiriusXM, via Pandora. We are everywhere, including iTunes. The important thing there, once you follow us, keep interacting. Leave those ratings. Leave those reviews. If you're on YouTube right now, let's get some likes. Let's get some comments. Let's get some shares. Because there's always time for Star Wars time, and we need you all to keep beating that drum for us as we slowly build our force of fans to 20/10. All right, my friends, don't forget, if you listen to the Star Wars Time show, the Force will be with you always.